Be cool, be kind, be classy. The cupcakes so sweet and sexy. Have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. And not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade. Sipping motions of lemonade. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Stack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Machegas. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proceed, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcakes sweet and sassy. And not just a YouTube show. When you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Good morning, my friends. Good morning. Today is Monday, October 21st, 2024. Where did October go? I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. Today we are here for day 2 of the Sarah Boone trial. And I'm here for it with you. Good morning. Good morning, worldwide viewers. I see Norway in the chat. Thank you. Thank you very much. The intro song was written and produced by an amazing viewer named Melissa, aka Turd Ferguson. And I made a quick video to go with it, and she did the song, and she's amazing. So thank you for liking it. I like it too. Gives me an extra 2 minutes to get ready because I'm always scrambling to get ready because I seem to always be very ambitious about the timing of when I schedule my shows, and I'm never ready. I don't know why. You ever feel like you're just always rushing somewhere? Always rushing all the time. Right? That's what happens when you're a multitasker. And you have a million other things going on. Oh, Judge Canone. Well, I don't know exactly what it means. So it seems like Judge Canone is going to no longer be the head judge of Norfolk County. And some sources have said that means that she's supposed to rotate out of Norfolk County into a different county. And so that would mean that she would no longer be handling the Karen Reed retrial. Remains to be seen. But I think it's very interesting. I think it's very interesting that all the dominoes are starting to fall since the Bettero letters, right? Tully, out. DA spokesperson David Traub, who's held that position for 25 years, out. Right-hand woman of Michael Morrissey, Lynn Beland, done. It's interesting, isn't it? And the timing is interesting. So we're going to have to see what happens. For those of you who did not see it, last night I did a show with Ali Mata of Defense Diaries. Ali and Bob, her husband, have a YouTube channel called Defense Diaries. And Bob's father represented John Wayne Gacy, the infamous criminal. And that's interesting. They did a whole podcast on that. And that's kind of where Bob, I think, started. So Ali was on with me last night, and they are both in Delphi, boots on the ground in court. And we did like a little show. It was 3 hours last night. And it was kind of like a primer for people who didn't really know a lot about the case. And many of you don't. And many of you know a lot about the case and a lot more than I do. And I'm freely willing to admit that. But it's a very interesting case. And unfortunately, there are no cameras in the courtroom. There will be no audio released of the proceedings in Delphi. And there's a lot of shenanigans going on in that case. Like if you thought Karen Reed was bad, Delphi, I think, is worse. At least Karen Reed was out on bail. This guy, Richard Allen, who was arrested, by the way, 5 years after two young girls, Abby and Libby, went missing and were tragically killed. He was arrested 5 years later. And since his arrest, he's being held in a prison in solitary confinement. So for those of you who don't know, you're supposed to be held in jail, in a county jail, until you're convicted, and then you go to prison. And he's been in solitary for over 2 years. He's lost something like 40 pounds. Like, the conditions in which he's been held are inhumane, in my opinion. And, there's been some alleged confessions that were made. There's a lot of sus stuff happening in Delphi. So we talked about it a bit last night. And I suggest, if you want to hear what's going on in the courtroom, that you tune into Defense Diaries to hear that. I don't know if they're doing nightly recaps. I'm not sure. But it certainly is very interesting to hear what it's like there. I know Lauren from Hidden True Crime is there as well. And they are lining up in the middle of the night because there's only something like 12 media seats per day. And Allie and Bob, I think, were invited by the family, so they don't have to deal with that. And it's crazy. Lauren is out there in a sleeping bag and a chair. And it's crazy. And it's also crazy how we compare every single case lately to what happened in Karen Reed, right? So it's a lot kind of easier to believe that this could be some sort of cover up, frame job, call it what you want. But there were some really weird rulings in that Delphi case, like the judge just dismissing Richard Allen's attorneys without him wanting them to be dismissed because of some leak that happened with some crime scene photos. It's crazy. There's some allegations, or there was a theory that the killing of these two girls was ritualistic, or perhaps some sort of sacrifice by a pagan religious group called Odinists or Odinism. And in fact, the original detectives, I think, who were with the FBI, originally followed that theory. And then, like, all of these people are mysteriously showing up dead, disappeared. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. So they're not allowed to talk about that theory at trial, and they're not allowed to use any third-party culprit theory. But in my opinion, there's not a whole lot of evidence against Richard Allen. So we're going to have to see how that turns out. Yeah, wasn't that a weird press conference that we watched last night too? Like, they released one sketch right away, and then they released another sketch like 2 years later. And the two sketches in Delphi look to me like completely different people. And they look to be like 30 years apart. It's crazy. Deanna thinks that Karen needs a new judge that won't be one-sided. It's getting cold in Indiana. I know. They've got multiple jackets on. They've got sleeping bags. I know Andrea Burkhart is there as well, and lawyer Lee is also there. What's the evidence? The evidence is there was a video taken from one of the girls' phones of a guy on this bridge. It's called the Monon High Bridge, and it's really scary. Like, Allie went there and she showed pictures of it. It's like this, it looks almost like a boardwalk, kind of, but it's about 60 feet down on either side to water. And it's like wooden slats, and there are no railings on either side. And it's a pretty damn long bridge. Does anybody know how long this bridge is? I would never walk over that bridge. I'd be petrified that I would fall off. The evidence is that they think, so there's a video that the girl took with her cell phone of this guy that they call Bridge Guy, who allegedly says down the hill, who they think is the killer, that they say is Richard Allen. Richard Allen is 5'4". This guy looks to me to be way taller than 5'4". And then, yeah, the police dismissed the feds. Yes, silver swag. And they found an unspent cartridge, a bullet, buried near where the bodies were found, like right under dirt, that they claim came from a gun that they found in Richard Allen's home. But many of you may know that the ballistics science on that is not so great. And it's also the same type of bullet that law enforcement in the county uses. So he confessed 61 times. Here's what I'll say about that. He didn't confess until after he was already in solitary for how long? Over a year? Who knows what kind of condition he was in. I did a show with Duty Ron about June of 2023. And that's when they were trying to have him moved from a prison to the jail. And the warden at the jail said, yeah, I can't protect him well enough. So they didn't move him. But Duty Ron had also a guest on who, his name's Anthony, and he does a show on what it's like to be inside prison. And he was saying that these are like totally inhumane conditions. Like it's insane. So I don't know if these confessions were coerced. There's some talk that the confessions said that he shot them to death, and they were not shot. It came out in openings that knives were the weapons, maybe two different kind of knives, one with a serrated blade, one without a serrated blade. And that at least one of the girls' throats were cut, right? 61 confessions with details not included, right? And allegedly he confessed to his wife on the phone. I mean, so much shenanigans going on there. Also today at 1:30, we are going to cover the Ashley Benefield hearing. They're having a hearing on that juror issue. So the last thing that happened, remember, they called the jurors in to question them to see if anybody had a cell phone in the deliberations room. And because that hoodie guy was in the law and crime chat saying that his sister was on the jury. And then there was the issue of whether that other juror, female juror, had lied on her jury questionnaire about never having been a victim or perpetrator of DV. And then defense came out with all of there were court records and pleadings, and she had been both. So they called the jurors and they questioned them all. That was not televised. We don't really know what happened, except we kind of are going to know what happened because I'm going to tell you, we're going to read through the state's opposition papers that they filed after that hearing. And then at 1:30, we're going to watch the hearing live. So I think that one starts, I think I set that one for like 1:10 because this judge usually takes lunch at 12:30. So it's a full docket today. Also, the Daniel Penny case is starting. Jury selection is starting today in Manhattan, in New York City. Daniel Penny is a 26-year-old former Marine who is on trial for manslaughter, facing up to 19 years in prison for taking the life for subduing. He's saying he subdued this man. He was a homeless man who was acting erratically, threatening to kill people on a subway, and has at least 40 prior arrests. And Daniel Penny put him in what he says was a sleeper hold to subdue him, and several other passengers helped as well. There were women and children on the train, babies and strollers. The passengers have testified that they feared for their lives. It was also found that there was synthetic marijuana in the system of the victim, and trial's going ahead. Openings are supposed to start beginning of November. I say Daniel Penny's a hero. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. Thanks, Patty B. Free Daniel Penny. So I put in my a community post up today of a video that I did on this case months ago to catch you up in case anyone's interested. I'm going to try and get to court at least 1 or 2 days of that trial because it's not going to be televised either. I'm a New Yorker. I take the subway. And let me tell you, if my kids were on that subway train, I would be glad that Daniel Penny was on that subway train. So that's my initial thoughts on it. As you know, I'm not afraid to share my thoughts. This is not a neutral channel. If you like neutral channels, this might not be the place for you because I'm going to tell you my opinions. I just am. So why are they trying this man? Great point, Robbie Ropes. They're saying it was not justifiable force. We'll see what happens with it. So if you go back and watch the video that I reposted today, you can hear some initial news clips from it. We went through the motion to dismiss the indictment, which gave us a lot of information about what people said in front of the grand jury. So there's that. There's that. Kim says he never should have been arrested. Good morning, Scott. Scott might have a lot to say about the Daniel Penny case because Scott worked as a New York City transit police officer for 25 years. So he knows all about what goes on in the subways. Right, Scott? My kids do use the subway alone. Yes. Yeah. Since the panty, in my opinion, subways have become a much more dangerous place. That it's a fact. It is a fact. Patty, the reason they're only charging Daniel is because he's the one who did the sleeper hold. And they're saying that it was too long. The sleeper hold was too long. You know, synthetic marijuana has been shown to make people act in very violent, erratic, scary ways. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that trial plays out. And I'm also interested to see if there's any supporters for Daniel Penny outside the courthouse down there on Center Street. I think it's down there, right next to it's in the criminal building. Yeah, Scott said, I told my nieces and nephews to drive into the city and not take the Long Island Railroad or a train. See? And Scott knows. That lady Cole says that synthetic bud is horrible. My oldest son's father was schizoaffective, and when he would smoke that, he would become paranoid and scary. He lived in Penn Station for years. He passed there in 2021. I'm so sorry. That's it is bad news. Bad news. Yeah, Debbie agrees on synthetic marijuana. Rah 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 rah, says the Boston subway is a nightmare as well. Yep. Susie Cupcake. Hi, Susie Cupcake. Lots of things have become more dangerous since the pandemic. It's a scary world we live in. It is. Brinley supports Daniel 100%. Lois says, inside info, synthetic marijuana is what killed Aaron Hernandez. He went crazy. That's interesting. I cannot confirm or deny. Moon Goddess says, the Boston subway's a nightmare. Haven't taken the subway in years. That lady Cole says, it's terrible. Thankfully he didn't harm anyone, but it certainly could have happened. Women and other passengers on the subway are going to say that they feared for their lives. He came in and was screaming, I don't care if I go to jail for the rest of my life, I'm going to kill somebody. So that's, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Penny raised millions for his defense. It's not getting a lot of press. Have you noticed, Christopher? It's just not. I hope today the court audio is better on Sarah Boone because like these people need to learn how to use a microphone or they need to mic them up because it's only fair that we get to hear what happens today. Hello, Freudians. Freudians slip and fall over. 100% true. Not a neutral channel. And that's totally okay. Some cases I love to watch here and some I can't watch here because I don't agree with your view. That's cool. I'm a due process gal too. And so that's why, you know, listen, I'm very like, I'm a constitutionalist. So even if I think someone may be guilty, I think that they should get a fair trial. So that's always going to take precedence over my opinion. And we talk about both. Oh, Gen X, you've never heard of this? 1968. This happened about 18 months ago. It's in the summer of 2023. So yeah, if you're interested, go back and watch that video. Is Sarah still in wardrobe or what? Hair and makeup? Maybe a juror's late. I mean, you know, lots of stuff goes on there that we're not privy to, but that's why I start on time. And then we have time to chit chat. Just me says, of course, not much coverage. Highlights the New York City mess. Letteros by Bettero. Isn't that a great name? I saw you last night in the chat when I did the show with Allie. Good morning. You didn't miss anything yet. Did somebody say there's another Bettero letter coming out? I mean, what could possibly happen next in that case of Aiden Carney? At the beginning, there was more coverage of Penny. Well, it should be ramping up now that the trial is starting. Although it's curious to me that they're saying jury selection starting today and they're not going to do openings until maybe the second week in November. We'll see. But sometimes that happens. They pick a jury and then the jury comes back to start. They don't always start the next day. What else is going on with you guys? Everyone hit the like button while we're waiting if you don't mind. That would really help push the stream out. Feel free to share it. Feel free to do all the things that YouTube likes. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. Thank you for Duck's sake. Thank you for saying it was a great show with Allie last night. Lori Life 360 for the win. Good morning. Says the flies are dropping in Massachusetts. Oh, yeah. The rats are scattering. Demi says the better letters are like another chapter in a book, a very good book. Good morning, James Smith. Good morning, Bama Girl to Tennessee. The next letter is proof that Mello was involved in the JFK assassination. I mean, what could come? It's 80 in Boston. It's going to be 78 here in New York. I know. We're having a little late summer. I love it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, TX Salty. Love the chat with Allie, the hair messing and all. Yeah, could you believe that? Some woman wrote in the chat. She said, it's very unprofessional for you to keep playing with your hair and to vape on the air. I think she was talking to Allie about the vaping because I don't vape, but both of us probably about the hair because my hair is constantly in my eyes and I have to move it because just do. And it was so rude. What do people do? Why do people just stop to leave rude comments? Just move on and watch some other free content on YouTube. How about that? So, I have to watch this. Yeah, this is with Anna Kendrick, right? Rara, has anyone else watched the dating game movie Woman of the Hour on dating game serial? Is it good? It's Anna Kendrick, and I'm here for it. Chrissy, a painter's daughter, is here for it too. Yeah, petty paralegal. It was petty. And people do that. And then someone else commented because I have not been following Delphi because I've been pretty single thread on Karen Reed for almost a year now. And every day something else breaks, right? Delphi is not my case. She knows way more about it than I do. And it was the title clearly said that this is like a primer. People were in the comments like, you don't know anything about the case. You should need me talking about it. I'm like, go find some other free content on YouTube that might be more to your liking. Yeah, bizarre. Oh, you didn't love that movie? Said it was strange, Donnie Boston. And Debbie says it was good, but I didn't like the ending. No spoilers because I haven't watched it yet. Hi, Northern California. It's early for you. Love that part of the country. I've been to Mill Valley. Been to Sweetwater, which is the music venue that does Bob Weir still own Sweetwater? I had some iterations of the Grateful Dead playing there once, and I went there, and it was really fun. Really cool, small music venue in Mill Valley. A lot of people from Tennessee here today. Hi, Helene. People can be so judgy. So true. That lady calls. Some people are just miserable and don't let you not agree with them. They'll blow a gasket. Yeah. It's misery loves company sometimes, and it's weird because it's like usually other women tearing down other women. It's whack. It is whack. Hello, Team Brittany. Good morning. Reminding me that Anna Kendrick should play Karen Reed in a movie. The movies are good. That's good. When we did our casting during the trial, that was one of the things we did. And I found my list the other day. I have to go back and find it. And a lot of people voted for Anna Kendrick. I don't think we ever did a final vote. I think Claire Danes was in there too, as I recall. Good morning. Sarah Smilin watched the movie last night and really liked it. Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. It was ridiculous, right? But they always say that to women creators because women creators have hair. The men don't. I need to go turn on the air conditioning because it's going to get hot in here. I can feel it already. So give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back. I'm back. Okay, did anybody watch the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction on Disney Plus on Saturday night? Cher was inducted, and I just want to point out that Cher is 78 years old. She looks incredible. Like crazy good. Ozzy Osbourne was on. He also got inducted. It did not, he does not look well. I think he has Parkinson's. Yeah, I love Cher too. It was really good. I mean, it's like really spanned all genres. They had, they inducted Jimmy Buffett, or they gave him an award. I can't remember. But Dave Matthews came out and played a song, a Jimmy Buffett song, and his wife and his daughter were crying. Oh, it was nice. And then Dave Matthews, of course, my guy, was inducted, and they closed out the show with a bunch of songs, and it was really like a medley kind of, and it was really good. And then on the way out, they said after they got their awards and they made their speech, they went back and said, okay, some of you are going to be leaving, so we're going to play some going out music. And they did, they played Burning Down the House, Talking Heads, which is so ironic because we were just talking about that the other day when we were talking about how Norfolk County is like, how Betterow is just burning down the house in Norfolk County. Crazy, right? Huge Ozzy fan. It was cool because Wolfie Van Halen came out and played guitar with the band that did the tribute to Ozzy. And he did, like, he was in a chair the whole time. I don't know if he's mobile, if he's able to walk, but he did the all aboard at the beginning. It was really good. I highly recommend to go back and watch the replay on that if it's up on Disney Plus yet. Because it was really good. Yeah, Cyndi Lauper and Cher. Yep. Dave. It was so cool. It was so good. It's the first time I've seen Dave's wife in many, many, many years. His wife is a doctor, and she's very low profile. Like, you never see her anywhere. They've been together for over 30 years, I think. Carolyn said the movie was not too good. Oh, Billy Idol was there too. It's amazing. Like, Cher is 78. Dionne Warwick also was inducted. She's like 80 something. And it's amazing. Billy Idol is also like 73. He's in amazing shape. He had like his shirt open all the way. Was Valerie there? Because I didn't see her in the crowd. Oh, was she there? Valerie Bertinelli is, as you may know or may not know, Wolfgang Van Halen's mom with Eddie Van Halen. And then Sammy Hagar came out and he sang, I think with the Ozzy band, right? I did, Charlene. I made a post about that yesterday, about Howie Carr's tweet. I posted it. And we don't know if she's being removed from Norfolk and being assigned. We don't know if she's being assigned to another county yet. It really hasn't been publicly confirmed, but Howie Carr did tweet it. And I made a post about it, I think yesterday. And it remains to be seen whether or not she's going to be assigned to the Karen Reed retrial, but we'll see. We can only hope. And I love how the people on the other side are like trying to spin it like it's a good thing that it's going to be a new judge because they think that Auntie Bev was so helpful to the defense. Like, were we watching the same trial? It was so interesting what Cher said. She said, I went to a Sonny and Cher concert when they were just getting started. Her hair was amazing. She said in her speech, she said, after I left Sonny, she's like, I had nothing. I had like a car and some clothes, and that was it. And I had to reinvent myself. And it was so interesting to hear her speech. Your mom's like, Billy Idol's so hot. It's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Says I saw Cher in concert. The fact she can still wear that bodysuit and look amazing is so crazy. Yeah. And Zendaya came out and introduced her. And the outfit that Zendaya had on was like something Cher would have worn like in the 70s. And she said she thanks Cher for like helping her fashion sense or something. It was crazy. Dua Lipa was the first one on, and she sang, was it a Cher song also? Yeah, it was cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, I love it. I love it, Moon Goddess. I'm always like, if I can be in the pit, because once you're up close, it's really hard to go back to the cheap seats. You know what I'm saying? If you know, you know. David Lee Roth was pissed off somewhere, says Screaming Daisy. You know it. Keith Urban was also there. Julia Roberts inducted Dave Matthews, and I had no idea that they were really good friends. And she was sitting at his table across from him, and she gave a great speech. It was funny. It was heartfelt. She talked about how the Dave Matthews Band changed her life. And she's a huge fan, and it seems that they're really good friends. It was so nice to see. Dishonorable Kim Jong-un says, crazy how both Cher and Tina Turner left their marriages with nothing and went on to legendary careers. Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes you don't, people that have to start all over again, they do it with a vengeance. Look at Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton went to some of those troubled teen camps as a kid, and she spoken openly about how she was in solitary in like a pit and said to herself, I am never, ever, ever going to have to rely on anyone for money. And a lot of people think she's, grew up rich because she was part of the Hilton family, but it's not true. She's self-made. Better as a rehoming service. That's great too. Keith Urban is excellent in concert. Plus, you never know who will pop up at a Nashville concert. It's so true. You could be in a bar in Nashville and somebody will just come in and pick up a guitar. And it'll be somebody famous. Oh, Jenny, you watched it? Jenny cried a few times. Said it was profoundly moving. I mean, and it was a long show too. It started at 7 Eastern. It didn't end until like 12:30. Oh, and the Buffs won too. They kicked some Arizona butt, and that was a great game. That was a great game. Billy Idol is 73. I believe he's 73. And he's the same age as Sting, and they are both in amazing shape. Sting is also 73, and I saw Sting, Jones Beach. I don't think it was this past summer. Maybe it was the summer before. And he played with his son, came on and played with him. And like that man, I don't know what he's taken, but whatever he's taken is the same thing that Cher is taking, and Billy Idol as well. Sorry, Monique. Paris Hilton has an incredible story and an amazing mindset. Love her courage, strength, and positivity. Yeah. She had a rough life, a lot of trauma. A lot of trauma. Donna Joe says, what if they're late because Sarah's taking the plea deal? I don't know. Maybe she's doing her makeup with a grease pencil. I don't know. 73 is not that old. No, Donna, not at all. I'm just saying they look amazing. Because Ozzy is also 73, right? And you compare Ozzy to Sting and Billy Idol. It's not old. I don't think 73 is old either. Good morning, Cal. Good morning. Auntie Candy's like, Sting would so be my hall pass. Yeah, plus he's into tantric stuff, and age is just a number. You're right. Age is just a number. I say that all the time, Sandy. Garen, that's a funny quote. A funny comment. Paul Clank, we had a whole discussion the other day. Hi, Paul. It's been a while about what our favorite flavors of Pop-Tarts are. Bonita, thank you for your comment, but please do not use the F word in my chat because YouTube has AI programs that scan the chat. We say ducking over here. If you know, you know. And we went through favorite flavors of Pop-Tarts the other day in the chat and how people like them. A lot of people put butter on Pop-Tarts. Never thought of that. I thought that was interesting. And some people were willing to admit that they preferred the unfrosted Pop-Tarts, which was also very interesting. But the overwhelming winner was the what's it called? The cherry Pop-Tart? Something cherry. Oh, Connie, it was an amazing game. That was my first time watching college football. I did that to you. Wasn't it a great game? So great. I took a picture. I posted it on my Instagram story of Deion Sanders. His two sons play on the team with him. And it was like a shot of them from behind, and he had his arms around his sons, and it was so nice. It was a really nice picture. Screenshot, frosted cherry. That's what it is, frosted cherry. I don't think I've ever even seen frosted cherry Pop-Tarts before, but I like cherry pie, so that was good. Duck does mean something else now, Dwight. That's what we use here. That's our code word. That is our code word. If you aren't putting butter on a Pop-Tart, you haven't been living. Well, that's an interesting theory. Thanks, Hunter. I had no idea. Thanks, Amanda, for gifting a membership. So nice of you to do that this morning. And you were with us last night as well. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Is a new member. So thank you. And Kitty Coo was randomly gifted the new membership. So welcome. Welcome. What do you think is going to happen on Ashley Benefield today? Heather said, I'd never heard of Dave Matthews till I started watching him in the UK. Really? I mean, he's a worldwide artist. He's been around since like 1991. He was a bartender, and he met a bunch of guys in Charlottesville, Virginia, and they just started a band, and they've become a worldwide phenomenon. And like Dave Matthews fans are like hardcore. And the thing about Dave Matthews is that you can go see their shows like 3 nights in a row. They never play the same set list, similar to the Grateful Dead or Dead and Company and Fish, who play different set lists every show. So you can go 3 nights in a row. Karen says, love y'all. Thanks for being a member for a month. Yeah, I remember one. Autocorrect would change the F word to duck. Yeah, it still does. If I talk to my phone, it'll type it out. Wow, somebody else, Marcy in the UK, also never heard of Dave Matthews. Interesting. That's okay, Linda. Check it out. Try it. If you want to just, start off slow, go to your Spotify, your Apple, wherever you get, and listen to the Under the Table and Dreaming album. It's a good starter album. And you might find that you might like it. Libby says, yeah, I think that's what people were saying. They put butter on the non-frosted side of the Pop-Tart. Yeah. Never knew. What? Sharon says, Sting grew up just down the road from me and went to the same school as my better half. No way. So your better half knew Sting in like high school or elementary school? That is crazy. That's crazy. No, Cindy, but I saw someone was covering that, and I didn't see it. There's a new RICO case against some crime tubers and others out of Pennsylvania. I don't know. No, if you want to put a little summary in the chat, I'll allow it. And Connie's a fan now of college football. That's awesome. Root for the Buffs. I think with one more win, we become eligible for a bowl game. So that's a pretty exciting thing. Yeah. Oh, you're going to both? You're going to Pittsburgh to see Dave and Columbus? I'm going to the Garden. They always come right around Thanksgiving. That's cool. It's fun, right, Jenny? I mean, well, you're going to Columbus and Pittsburgh, so toaster strudels came out. Or yeah, remember when toaster strudels came out in an attempt to compete with Pop-Tarts? It was burn my mouth. Me too. And then you get that little hanging down piece of skin on the roof of your mouth in between your 2 front teeth. It's the worst. The worst. Kim loves Dave Matthews. Oh, and the Yankees are going to the World Series. Sorry, guys. It's going to be amazing. Yankees Dodgers. Like, wow. It's like my family's two favorite teams. I grew up in a Yankee house. My mom had season tickets, and she would get in the car and she would go by herself if nobody would go with her. She'd get in her little convertible and she would go to the Yankee game. I remember when my mother had her own business, and she had right when cell phones first came out. This was how long ago it was. It was like a cell phone that was in a bag that was like really big. Like, I'm not even far enough away to show you, like this big. It was in a bag and you carried it over your shoulder and you had to unzip it and you could talk on the phone. She'd be talking on the phone at the Yankee games, running her business. It was hilarious. Hilarious. And she would look around and say, "Can't people see that I'm on the phone? They need to quiet down." But that was, at the old stadium. If you know, you know. It's supposed to start at 9, my pal Sal, but it's not. It's 9:37. Maybe a juror was late. Who knows? Who knows what the holdup is, but here we wait. Wednesday morning, the duck felon, Richard Schiffer in Canton, is going to be arraigned at Stoughton District Court, 9 a.m. I wonder if I can get the Zoom feed for that. This is the man who put little rubber duckies around Canton, and he's being charged with a bunch of felonies for witness intimidation. They are looking for people to support outside the courthouse if you're local. Pop-Tarts are sweet. It's like you could say it's like a scone, sort of, but with a filling. And then some of them have frosting on top. It was drama. The Rico case, you mean? Don't pollute your brain. I have to try and keep away from the drama. Thank you, Monique. Thank you, me. Thanks for being with me for 3 months. Thank you for having an awesome, classy channel. Was there ever a time in your life that you thought Dave Matthews was really old? No, because we're like the same age. So no. But thank you for thinking I'm so much younger than Dave Matthews. Nope. Oh, I also saw something really cute that somebody posted on, was it TikTok? Billy Joel's, one of his kids, he's got 3 children with his newest wife. I don't know how old she is, maybe 10. And she came on stage and sang with him, or just actually kind of danced and like was acting out the words to My Life at a concert. And the comments were, or the caption was like, "One of Billy Joel's daughter has mean character energy. I want her energy." It was so cute. So cute. Cindy says, "Dave is old. I'm old, but he's still hot." All right, Jenny's working from home today. Thank you, favorite channel. Thank you very much. No, not his wife was 10, but she might as well be. I think his wife is a lot younger than Alexa. It's his daughter with Christy Brinkley. If you know, you know. Stevie Nicks still doing her thing at 76. I love Stevie Nicks too. Love her. Hi, Karen. Thanks for being here for a month. Love y'all too. Love you right back. Thanks, California Sandy, for becoming a new member. California Sandy, I think you're a nurse. RN is in the title, in the name. What else is going on, friends? What else you want to talk about? Kim says, "This is fun waiting for the trial to start. I do not like Pop-Tarts. I wouldn't choose them either. And you know what I think also? I think they should be individually wrapped. I don't like that there's 2 in the foil pack, because if you only want to eat one, the other one goes stale. So there's that. Hi, Pierre. I hope you feel better soon. Pierre's not feeling good. So watching the trial with your dog. Hello to your dog. Grateful Glow coming in with the facts. Dave Matthews is 57. That is so not old. Right. That's okay. Our demographic here is, I think like 80% of our audience is 45 plus. So that's why we get the sponsors, because you are a very desired demographic, my friends. Very desired demographic. Everybody loves Stevie. Where on earth is Sarah? I've been up since 6 a.m. waiting for her. Sarah, where is Sarah? KG, are you on the West Coast? I was going to see if anybody was tweeting from the courtroom. Let's see. Tomorrow is supposed to be Ashley Benefield's sentencing, so we're going to see what happens today at the hearing regarding the juror issue, if he's going to grant her a new trial, because then the sentencing would become moot. Let's see if anybody's in the courtroom. Notorious Jules is in the courtroom. She says Sarah Boone would be taking the stand in her own defense tomorrow. All right, so tomorrow, gonna want to be here for that. 8 minutes ago, Jules posted the victim advocate is in the courtroom. We are waiting for the jurors. Some of the jury is not there yet, in case anybody was wondering on the delay. That was 11 minutes ago. So that's exactly what I thought. Exactly what I thought. Is anybody watching that Farris trial? I heard that's interesting. I heard it was interesting. Thanks, Marcia. She loves how I keep it real on the tubes. Scott says, okay, I'm going to give you a breakfast for hangovers. All right, good. Let's do it. You worked in the summers of 84 to 86, a bowl of Fruit Loops and a 7-ounce Budweiser bottle. Breakfast beer. Breakfast beers for Scott. Yeah, I don't think that we're waiting on a deal. I think we're waiting on the jury to show up. They're a little late. Riley says, my wife is in Orlando visiting family. I'm home with the pups, and I told her to go to the trial for me. She thinks I'm crazy. You can. It's open to the public. We'll see if we can see how crowded it is today. Some of these cases, like the Lonnie Simon courtroom, is apparently empty. There's nobody there in Savannah. All right, so if you're just joining, good morning. I mean, we're waiting for jurors to show up, which is why court's running late. They were supposed to start at 9, but they didn't. They just didn't. It has been reported by Notorious Jules, our court watcher, that Sarah Boone is expected to testify tomorrow. Christy says, Melanie, my kids and I refer to you by first name, and the hubby gets mad because he still doesn't know who Melanie is. That's great. That's funny. All right, looks like there's some activity going on in the courthouse. So we found out that the young people sitting on either side of the judge are law students from the mock trial team that he's invited to come and sit there and trial watch. So great experience for them. Sarah is getting her belt unchained.
As soon as Madam Clerk calls it, we can do that.
Case number 2020-2603, the state of Florida versus Sarah Boone. Parties announced your names for the record, beginning with the state.
Dave Ketchler, half the state. William Jenkins State.
Defense.
James Owens for Sarah Boone.
Tell me Henderson for Sarah Boone. Kevin Becker,
Ms. Boone, raise your right hand and be sworn. Please do you swear or affirm the testimony you should give, just be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
Good morning, ma'am. Can you state your full name and date of birth for the record for me?
Sarah Boone, 10-10-77.
Ms. Boone is seated at counsel's table wearing a black jacket and a white multicolored shirt. Looks like some splotching on it. She is in custody. However, she's not wearing any restraints. So we will be standing when our jury panel enters and exits. The parties may approach.
All right, she's wearing a black suit and a what looks like maybe like a python patterned white blouse with black like python pattern, it looks like to me, or some sort of polka dots. Yeah, I've been watching the Farris trial, Southern Mom. It's pretty crazy. Yes to Farris, but strange. Okay. Citizen Sleuth is on jury duty right now. Good. Good. Don't try and get out of it. Serve if you can, if they'll let you.
All right, State, anything we need to address before we bring in our panel this morning?
Not from the state.
Defense.
No, sir.
All right. Ms. Boone, just a couple of questions before we bring in our panel this morning. Are you still satisfied with your lawyer's representation of you in this matter?
Very much so.
And are you still on board with the strategy that they are utilizing in your defense?
Yes.
All right, very good. Let's go ahead and stand and bring in our panel.
I like that he keeps asking her that question because it'd be hard for her to show an effective counsel on an appeal. And she keeps saying she's definitely very satisfied with her lawyers. Oh, I think Team Brittany, he's going to ask her every day after lunch and in the morning and then after lunch. I think he'll ask her every day if she likes her lawyers. I don't think did she fire any of her lawyers? I think they all moved to withdraw because she was such a difficult client. I mean, she's on her 9th lawyer right now. Smash the like button, says Commander Ed. Thanks, Commander. Rio Monty Beth. I've been trying to keep up with the Farris trial and Leilani Simon trial. Thanks for the 5. Yeah, not easy. It's gonna be busy until Thanksgiving. Everywhere. It's too many cases, too little time. Welcome, Diane. TJ, yeah. Is the 82,000 letters she sent, and also because so many of her lawyers have wanted to withdraw, and also to prevent any issues on appeal. Sarah, I'm getting out of your head. You might need to change your name after this.
State, do you recognize our jury?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense, do you recognize our jury?
Yes.
All right, everyone can be seated. Members of the jury, good morning. Welcome back to 12 Alpha of the Orange County Courthouse. I hope that you all had a restful weekend and enjoyed your time with your loved ones, your friends, and your family. Just if you could, I gave you a long instruction on Friday before we broke. If you could please confirm that you complied with the court's instructions by raising your hand at this time. Record reflect that all members of our panel have raised their hands. Now, members of the jury, I know the line to get in this morning was quite long. So the lawyers have reminded me that on the right side of the entrance of the courthouse is a jury-only line. So if you can make your way all the way to the far right side of the entrance, there's a jury-only line. Yes, sir. Juror number 2 in the back. Huh? It was still quite long? Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Just wanted to bring that to your attention if you did not know. Obviously, if you're stuck, we're waiting on you. So don't feel anxiety or anything if you're stuck in that line. We can't start till you all get here. And I appreciate, again, your sacrifice and your attentiveness in this process. With that, State, you can call your next witness.
State will call Dr. Sarah Sadovich.
Medical witness. Yay. Wonder if this is the medical examiner.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Thank you.
Good morning, doctor. Could you please state and spell your name for the record for us?
Sarah Zadovich, SARAZYDOWICZ.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Good morning, doctor.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a forensic pathologist.
And who do you work for?
I work for Orange County. We cover Orange County and Osceola County.
And how long have you been a forensic pathologist?
I've been at this office for about 12 years and then 1 year in Tampa, so about 13 years.
And what type of educational background do you have to be a forensic pathologist?
So I have a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I went to medical school in Kansas City, Missouri. After that, I went to Cleveland, Ohio to do a 1 year rotating clinical internship. After that, I went back to the University of Wisconsin. I did my residency in anatomic pathology and clinical pathology. I have 2 fellowships or subspecialty training. One is in cytopathology from Northwestern University in Chicago. And then I did my forensic pathology fellowship in Tampa.
Is continuing education something that you must maintain in order to hold your position?
Yes, I have to do continuing education for my board certifications, which is in anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, and forensic pathology. And I also have to do separate continuing medical education to maintain my medical license for the state of Florida.
So tell us, what are your duties as a medical examiner?
So we're involved in what's called the medical legal investigation of deaths. And that just means that we investigate certain types of deaths. And there's a Florida statute or a Florida law that states which types of deaths that we'll be involved in investigating. And in general, they're deaths that are not natural. So accidents, suicides, homicides, or deaths that are natural but maybe unexpected. Those are the types of cases that we're involved in. And again, that Florida statute lays out exactly which types of cases that we'll be involved in. And the reason we're involved in that is our goal is to determine cause of death and manner of death in those individuals that we're investigating.
Could you tell us what an autopsy is, generally speaking?
So an autopsy is also called a postmortem or after death examination. And there are kind of 2 main parts to it. The first part is what's called an external examination, which is just as it sounds. So that's making observations about an individual. So hair color, eye color, height, any sort of unique markings like scars or tattoos. And at that time, we're also looking for any external signs of diseases or injuries. After that, we go to what's called the internal examination. So that means that we open the body cavities, we remove all of the organs and dissect all of the organs. And again, as we're doing that, we're looking for any signs of diseases or injuries that might help explain why that person died. And we can also add ancillary tests or other tests. So things like toxicology, microbiology. It's a little bit dependent on each case, but we have options for other testing as well.
Can you tell us what is the cause and manner of death? And is this something that you document?
Yes, so cause of death is either a disease or an injury that ultimately results in an individual's death. Right? So it's very individual and unique to that individual. Manner of death is a way to categorize or group similar types of deaths together. And for manner of death, there's only 5 choices. So there would be natural, accident, suicide, homicide, or undetermined. So those are the manners of death.
In your career, approximately how many autopsies have you performed?
Around 3,000.
And have you previously testified as an expert witness in court?
Yes.
How many times?
Between 75 to 80.
And in what areas have you testified as an expert witness?
Forensic pathology.
Turning our attention to this case, did you perform the autopsy?
Yes.
And what were your findings as to cause and manner of death?
So the cause of death, which I put on the death certificate, is positional asphyxia with environmental suffocation. And the manner of death I classified as homicide.
Now, when
That's
you
big.
perform your autopsy, what information do you have at the time that you begin that examination?
It's incredibly variable. I can have a lot of background information. Sometimes I have none. It just depends on the particular case.
In this case, what information were you provided at the time?
So the information I had was that the decedent was with his girlfriend, and At some point in time in the night, he got into a suitcase, which was then zippered shut. At another point at time, I believe she went to bed, and then the next morning discovered that he was still in the suitcase. And I think that was in about an 11-hour time frame from the information that I had.
You mentioned asphyxia. Can you explain for us what asphyxia is?
Sure. So asphyxia is a very general term. It would be kind of like saying, I drive a car, right? That's very generic. And we know that there are many different types of cars out there, right? So asphyxia simply means lack of oxygen or inadequate oxygen for an individual. And there are different categories of asphyxia. So you can have suffocation, which just means that there's obstruction of the airways. So that could be smothering, that could be somebody choking on a piece of food, or maybe just being in an environment where there's not enough oxygen in the air to sustain that individual. There's a category called strangulation. That would be compression of the neck, either blood vessels or airways. There's another category called mechanical asphyxia. That can be when the body is in an unusual or abnormal position where the actual mechanics of breathing can't occur. So that can be the position of the body, or it can be like, let's say if a heavy object fell on somebody and you simply can't breathe because of the weight of that object. That would be a mechanical asphyxia. And then there's drowning. That's a different type of asphyxia. And there are a couple of other categories as well that are much less common.
Is there a most common type of asphyxia?
The most common would be ligature compression of the neck. So that would be like an event, a hanging. That would be the most common that we would see.
You also mentioned environmental suffocation. Could you tell us a little bit more what that means in more layman's terms?
So that just means that there's not enough oxygen in the environment that the person is in. You could think of somebody who's in an enclosed space where there's a fixed amount of oxygen. So as that oxygen is, as that person is breathing, they're using up all the oxygen. And once it's gone, there's no oxygen left. Or you could think of maybe people who are, climbing Mount Everest. There's not as much oxygen up there, and that's why they have oxygen tanks. So it just means that the amount of oxygen available in the air around that person is not enough to sustain them.
Karina wants to know, why is the subtitles not matching what she's saying? For example, they just said instead of amount of oxygen, it said, it said something about Mount Everest. So don't rely on them. I put them up for people who are hearing impaired, or sometimes the audio is terrible, but that's where we got motions in lemonade from. So, sometimes we get funny jokes out of it. Don't totally rely on them if you don't have to, but, are you saying that they were behind? Okay.
In this case, what can you tell us about how long Jorge Torres was in that suitcase?
There's not a really good way for me to give you a time frame as to how long he was in that suitcase. Again, because there was both the component of positional asphyxia, being in an unusual position for a period of time, and then also the environmental suffocation component. Because within that suitcase, certainly there's going to be oxygen, but it's not going to be the same as if you were sitting in a room like this. And because there are those multiple components happening at the same time, there's not a really good way to estimate or say with scientific certainty, oh, he was in for X amount of time. There's really not a good way to do that.
How about, is there any good way to approximate or determine the time that Jorge Torres died?
There's not a good way to do that either, again, because there are so many different components at play at the time of his death. Sitting in a normal room like this, the percentage of oxygen that's available is about 20 to 21%. If that were to drop to 10 to 15%, the person can be impaired with judgment, they can be impaired with activity. Once that percentage drops between 8 to 10%, most people will lose consciousness. And at a percentage of 8% oxygen or less, that's when we would expect the death to occur. And so again, there's not a really good way to measure the amount of oxygen that would have been available to him in that suitcase, in addition to the fact that he was in an unusual position.
What position were you able to determine he was in that suitcase?
I wasn't able to see what position he was in. By the time that our medical legal death investigators were at the scene, he was already removed from the suitcase. Based on some of the findings, I favor that he was most likely in like a fetal type position. So knees flexed, arms flexed, and the head most likely flexed forward. But again, that's from my findings. I didn't see what position he was in.
What side of his body would he be resting on in this fetal position?
That's that most likely his left side. However, I do say the caveat that some of the findings are dependent on time, meaning that, you know, if that suitcase had been moved or flipped over, that could be different than what I'm seeing at the time of my examination.
Tell us, what is skin slippage?
So after death, the body goes through a series of progressive changes. And one of those changes is skin slippage. And what that does is it tells me that that person is a little bit further away from the actual time of death. So it's not something that's going to occur immediately after death for most people. It's something that would occur a little bit later on in that process of changes that happens after death.
And tell us, what is rigor mortis?
So rigor mortis is also called the post-mortem stiffening of muscles. And again, that's one of the changes that occurs after death. Most of the times that will occur before we see skin slippage. But these changes are very variable from individual to individual. And it also depends a lot the environment the person is in. So for example, those changes that we're going to see happen more quickly in a warm environment. Somebody who maybe is engaged in a physical or violent struggle, those changes are going to occur more rapidly. And then it also depends on the person themselves, you know, their relative size, their relative health. Those things can all impact the changes that we see after death.
How does skin slippage and rigor mortis inform your findings about how long Jorge Torres was likely in that suitcase?
So again, you know, the time frame that I had was about 11 hours, just from the last time that he was known to be in the suitcase versus the time that he was found. So I'm basing it off of that. So about an 11-hour time period. When I did my examination, the rigor mortis was already dissipating or leaving. Also, there was some skin slippage. And so if he had not been in the suitcase, if he had been out of the suitcase, I would not expect that advanced amount of change. It's compatible with him being in that suitcase for a longer period of time. It would have been warmer. And also if he had been, you know, struggling to get himself out, you know, engaging that physical activity, those are things that are going to accelerate or speed up that process. So my findings at the time of the examination are compatible with that 11-hour time period, or, you know, somewhere around there.
Additionally, did you note any injuries to the body of Jorge Torres?
Yes.
These injuries that you noted to the body of Jorge Torres, did you document them on what's called a body chart?
Yes, the diagram on a body chart, and we also take pictures as I'm going through my examination.
I don't think they're going to show them, so don't worry. I mean, the pictures anyway.
Your Honor, may approach the witness who has been previously marked for identification and shown to defense as states are.
You may.
Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as states are. You recognize this document?
Yes.
And can you tell us, what is this document?
That's a copy of my body diagram.
So,
Oh, it's a copy of my body diagram.
and does this fairly and accurately represent the diagram that you created in this case for George Torres.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification as states R into evidence.
No objection.
What was pre-marked as states R will be received into evidence without objection as states 12.
Your Honor, request permission to publish.
Yes, sir.
Oh, no waistcoat today on the prosecutor. We liked his waistcoat the other day with his tan suit.
So, ma'am, on this body chart, can you describe for us and point out
Mm, I just need to move the captions so they're out of the way of the body chart. Okay.
what was the first blunt impact injury that you identified?
So there were some blunt impact injuries to his head. I don't think it's on this one, but there were some blunt impact injuries to his head right up here around the eye and on the mouth area.
I'm going to pause it here in case you want to come back and look at this diagram later. It's hard to read. It's hard to see, but in case you have curiosity, there it is for you.
And then, did you notate any injuries to his hand?
Yes, so there were some ecchymoses, or you can think of that as like a large kind of bruise on both hands.
Did she hit him with the bat?
What other blunt impact injuries did you identify?
So there was a series of ecchymoses on the left side of the back, which right about here.
Bruises on the left side of the back.
Any others?
There were some on the forearms as well.
And you use this body chart, you say, in addition to photographing the injuries that you document, correct?
Yes.
As part of your examination, and I believe it's on the body chart itself, do you document the height and weight of the person as well?
Yes.
And what was the height
There's your
of
answer.
Mr. Torres?
So technically for us, it's length. Height is the measurement that's taken while someone is standing. So his length was 62 inches and his weight was 103 pounds.
5'2", 103.
In regards to these blunt impact injuries, how is it that you come to the conclusion that these injuries were the result of blunt impacts?
So these are typical wounding patterns for blunt force trauma. And when I say blunt force trauma, that can mean something striking a part of the body, or on the other hand, it can be the body striking an object. And that causes injury to the skin, to the soft tissue, and sometimes the deeper tissues, depending on how severe or how strong that blunt force trauma is.
She totally reminds me of Jan from The Office, right? Totally.
Are these injuries consistent with a person being struck with a baseball bat?
They could be, yes.
Are they consistent with a person being pushed down a flight of stairs?
They could be, yes.
Could be.
Can you say whether or not these injuries occurred while George Torres was in the suitcase?
No.
Why is it that you cannot say that?
So all of these injuries seem to have occurred around the same time, meaning that they're relatively acute or new. They're not things that are healing or something that happened last week. So they all occurred around the same time. But you can't really look at a bruise or a contusion and say, oh, that happened 2 hours ago. There's not a good way to do that.
Are these injuries consistent with them occurring while he was inside the suitcase?
Yes, they could be.
As part of your examination, do you also check the toxicology of George Torres.
Yes.
And is that something that's pretty standard in any autopsy?
Yes.
And what were the toxicology results for George Torres?
So there was a blood alcohol level of 0.139 milligrams per deciliter, and there was also caffeine and nicotine detected as well.
That level of alcohol, is that over the legal limit in the state of Florida to drive?
Sure. So for driving under the influence, that's a 0.08. So that is higher than that.
What does that alcohol level at the time of your autopsy tell you about George Torres's level of impairment 11 hours earlier?
So I don't necessarily know that it was 11 hours earlier, but it was at the time of death, at or near the time of his death. That's what the blood alcohol level was. So at that level, everyone reacts a little bit differently to alcohol. And some of it has to do with whether or not somebody is accustomed to drinking alcohol or if they've never had alcohol. So you can develop tolerance. But at that level, there's going to be impairment of judgment. There can be impairment of motor skills. There can be slurring of words. Something that's called disinhibition or lack of inhibition. And again, it's really variable from person to person, but those are the common things that you would see at that level.
Would that level of
I was distracted and I don't want to rewind it. Can somebody put the BAC level in the chat, please? Thank you, my collaborative friends.
alcohol impair the ability to problem solve?
It can, yes.
You also stated earlier that you document your autopsy findings also photographically, correct?
Yes.
Yes, I'll allow it, Mary. George, played by John Leguizamo. Thank you, Claire. 0.139 was his BAC. And remember, he's only 5'2" and 100 pounds. Can also impair breathing. Good point, Kate.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness who's been marked for identification as stage Q and been shown to defense?
You may.
Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as stage Q. Could you take a look at this composite of photographs to yourself and then look up once you're finished?
Yeah.
Ma'am, do you recognize these photographs?
Yes.
Are these photographs a portion of the photographs that you took in your autopsy of George Torres in this case?
Yes.
Do they fairly and accurately represent how he appeared and how his injuries appeared to you at the time you performed your autopsy?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification as stage Q into evidence.
No objection.
What was pre-marked as states Q will be received into evidence without objection as states 13.
Your Honor, request permission to publish.
You may do so.
I don't know if they're going to show him on TV. Likely very gruesome. Remember that first responder said he was purple. Sarah even said he was
Ma'am,
purple
I'm
on
showing
the
you
call, the 911 call.
photo 1 from State's composite. Tell us, what is this a photo of?
So this is the identification photo that's basically just showing from about the level of the collarbones up.
And this
We're
is
not
Jorge
showing it, so
Torres.
don't worry.
Yes.
Did you note any signs of injury in this photo?
So there's some ecchymosis around the left eye. This picture, it's a little bit hard to see, but I think there's another one coming up. There's also an area of ecchymosis up here on the left side of the forehead with also some swelling associated with that. The lips have some contusions and small lacerations. And then on the left shoulder here, you can see a little bit of some ecchymosis here, or again, ecchymosis are kind of like big bruises.
Big bruises. Forehead, left eye.
Turning to photo 2 from State's composite. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is his right arm near the elbow. And right here, you can see this kind of darker area. So this looks similar to an abrasion, but it's actually, it's what's called drying artifact. And again, this is one of the reasons that I think that he was in that suitcase for a little bit longer. Most likely that was a pressure point where part of that suitcase was resting on his elbow in that area. And then after death, that tissue dries out, and that's the discoloration that you're seeing there.
We're going to have to play a commercial today, guys. At some point.
Turning to States 3 from the composite.
So here you can see a little bit better. I don't know if you can get a feeling for this, but this area is what we call edema or swelling. So this whole area is edema. It's a little bit discolored, so ecchymosis. And then again, really at the corner of the eye here, you can see that darker discoloration. And so those are injuries from blunt force trauma.
Did you punch him in the eye? I mean, I don't know if you'd bruise your eye if you fell down in the suitcase, right? I don't know. Fell down the stairs in a suitcase, you think you would bruise your eye?
States 4 from the composite.
So this is the left shoulder and arm. So again, you can see this kind of red to purple area. So this is all ecchymosis, and then a couple of linear abrasions or scratches.
States 5 from the composite.
This is the same area, just a little bit closer up, so you can see this whole area of ecchymosis. It's a little bit variegated, differential in color, but again, that's all blunt force trauma.
And what part of the body is this we're looking at?
This is the left shoulder.
States 6 from the composite.
That's the same area, but in this picture, we have a scale or the ruler.
And why do we use scales and rulers?
That's just to give an idea of how big the area is or how large the injury is.
States 7 from the composite.
So this is the left forearm and hand, and you can see the area right here that's a little bit red to purple, and then also right here on the left hand, right here and here. Those are all areas of ecchymosis, again, blunt force trauma.
So was he punching her back, or did they have a fist fight before he went in the suitcase? That's interesting. It kind of sounds like defensive, or, you know, the outside of the hands.
States 8 from the composite.
Again, the left arm. Just from a little bit of a different angle, so you can see, and a little bit with the elbow too here, but you can see all these areas, ecchymosis.
States 9 from the composite.
And now looking at the left hand, a little bit closer up, so you can kind of see a little bit better these areas of ecchymosis.
States 10 from the composite.
And again, the left hand just closer up.
States 11 from the composite.
So now we're looking at the back, and you can see that there are these linear abrasions in the mid-back.
Are those scratch marks for?
They could be scratch marks. They could also be blunt impact, more of just a straight-on blunt impact, especially being in that suitcase if there are objects in there.
What is the discoloration that we see around his shoulders and then and some other spots on his back as well?
Sure. So you're talking about this area?
Yes.
So that's called livor mortis or lividity, and that's one of the changes that we see again after death. And basically what that is it's postmortem after death, settling of blood in the blood vessels. And so it's dependent on gravity and it's dependent on the person's position. So what I mean by that is we're seeing it on his back because after the time of death, at some point in time, he was more positioned on his back. And the areas that are lighter, that's because for a couple of reasons. It could be the position of the body, meaning that it's not in the gravity dependent position, or there could be something pressing on it. So either one of those.
We saw that in John O'Keefe as well. Remember the lividity on the on his back, because it's laying on his back for a long period of time before he was found.
States 12 from the composite.
So those are those linear abrasions just shown a little bit closer up.
States 13 from the composite.
And the same, but with a scale.
States 14 from the composite.
So now you're seeing the left side of his back and also the back of his left arm. And you can see these areas here of ecchymosis, and these are a lot darker than some of the others that we've seen. One of the things that I did is I looked underneath the skin in these areas because they're so much darker and so much more dense. So I wanted to see if there was injury of the deeper tissues. So these areas are associated with hemorrhage or bleeding into the skeletal muscle, so the deeper tissues. And so that's just indicating more force applied to that area.
And when you did your internal exam, did you examine this area and did that inform your findings?
Yes.
States 15 from the composite.
And that's showing those areas a little bit closer up. So you can see that they're much more dense. There's at least 3 distinct areas here. There could be more than 3 impacts, but there's at least 3 separate ones that can be seen.
States 16 from the composite.
This is just showing the upper back and the back of the neck. We've got a linear abrasion right here on the back of the neck, and these were the ones shown in the earlier pictures.
And states 17 from the composite.
And this is just showing the same area of the back and the back of the arm, but just at a different angle.
So we've discussed and seen evidence of many different injuries In total, how many blunt impact injuries did you identify?
I can't give you an exact number. Again, you can have multiple impacts in a very close area. So it can be hard to discern each one. They can overlay each other or they can be so close to each other. But at least, 5 to 6, most likely more than that.
And when you were going through your body chart as well, and I guess we also saw some of it photographically, as you also mentioned impact to the left side of the head.
Yes.
And I believe that was subgaleal.
Subgaleal. So kind of similar to what I was describing on the back. I looked at the underside of the scalp. And so in those areas on the left side of his forehead where there was the edema, when we reflect or we fold the scalp over, there was hemorrhage or bleeding that went through the entire scalp and was deposited on the skull. There was no associated skull fracture and there was no bleeding inside of the skull, but it was all in the scalp and deposited on the outer surface of the skull.
So under the skin, but not under the skull.
Correct.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Well, this
Thank
cross
you.
should be
Any
interesting.
cross-examination?
Yes. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is James Owens, and I'm one of the lawyers that represents Sarah Boone here today. And I've got 2 questions. Can we first talk about the toxicology?
Yes.
The alcohol. You said you've done approximately 3,000 autopsies. And of those autopsies, how many years would that have been over that period of time?
12 years.
Okay. So when you first got down here from Tampa, I think you were up in the Northeast, you came down here to Tampa, that's when you started?
Yes.
And you would agree you've interpreted toxicology results in all or most of those cases?
Most, yes.
And you did order the blood alcohol test of the decedent in this case? And you said he was a 0.38?
No, 0.138.
0.138.
Dude,
And you also ordered the vitreous.
dude, that's a huge difference. The defense attorney said, and you said it was 0.38. And she's like, no, 0.138.
This level
Yes.
of alcohol as well, and the result was
Can I hear that
also
question again,
ordered
sorry?
No, 0.138.
0.138, and you also ordered the vitreous level
Yes.
of alcohol as well, and the result was a 0.213,
Yes.
and you would agree that's about it's about 3 times the legal limit.
Close, yes.
Now, you would agree that at those levels there are some pharmacologic effects from ethanol in the body.
Yes.
And I know you mentioned some, but you agree that level of alcohol in the body would impair somebody's judgment
For most people, yes.
and their decision-making abilities.
Yes.
And it would release inhibitions,
Yes.
and they would be more apt to take risk that they otherwise would not.
Yes.
And of course, it would impair motor skills and potentially loss of balance.
Yes.
It would also impair coordination,
Yes.
hand-eye coordination, as well as fine motor skills.
Yes.
It also impairs memory, alcohol does.
Yes.
So there are lots of effects that ethanol has on the body.
Yes.
He's going to try and use this in defense of Sarah. Everything that she's saying, he's going to say, you heard the medical examiner say that heavy alcohol use can impair memory. Yep. And it can impair, and he's going to use that in defense of Sarah. It's smart. This is very smart. Let's listen to it. The other questions. Hang on.
Would also impair coordination,
Yes.
hand-eye coordination, as well as fine motor skills.
Yes.
It also impairs memory, alcohol does.
Memory.
Yes.
So there are lots of effects that ethanol has on the body.
Yes.
Now, you're aware in this case that Jorge Torres, the decedent, stepped into the suitcase under his own power in a game of hide and seek.
That's how it was reported to me. Yes.
Do you have any evidence to dispute that?
No.
Can you tell us when Mr. Torres drank the last drink he had prior to getting in the suitcase?
That I can't tell you because, if somebody had been drinking either periodically throughout a time period or continually throughout a time period, that's difficult to say.
So he could have stopped drinking an hour before he got into the suitcase, or 5 minutes before he got into the suitcase, or 4 hours before he got into the suitcase.
Yes.
We just don't know.
Correct.
Do you have any idea at the time of the autopsy whether or not he was in the elimination phase?
So
Metabolism.
he was in the metabolic phase, yes.
The elimination phase is what I refer to it as, but
Yes.
okay. All right, now I want to talk
Why
about
don't you
time of
explain that
death
to the jury?
determination.
Why don't you explain to the jury what that means, elimination phase or metabolic phase? You're just going to gloss over that? Somebody said, but it doesn't really matter. They both chose to drink alcohol that night. No, right. But in order to use battered spouse, she's going to have to show an overt act by him that made her in fear for her life and in order to be able to use that self-defense battered spouse. So they may say her memory was impaired. That's why she told that story in the morning to the police, law enforcement, that it was, she went to sleep and it was an accident. And her memory was impaired because she was so drunk the night before. And here's what really happened. And that's why Sarah Boone, who's supposed to testify tomorrow, has to testify in narrative fashion. Her attorney is not going to ask her questions because he can't suborn perjury because she's changed her story so many times. So be prepared for that. In my opinion, tomorrow, it's my prediction.
It's fair to say that you did not go to the scene that day that Mr. Torres was found.
No, a medical legal death investigator from our office went to the scene.
So there was an investigator with your agency named Ashley Hammermeister
Yes.
that went to the scene,
Yes.
and she would have prepared a report.
Yes.
And you would have reviewed that report.
Yes.
I'm not saying alcohol use is a defense. I'm
agree that
saying
if I-
alcohol use is going to be the reason that she's going to say that her memory was wrong when she spoke with law enforcement. There's a very distinct difference there.
Fire and rescue assessed Mr. Torres at 1:07 p.m. on that date, February 24th of 2020.
Yes.
Does that sound about right based on your case file?
Yes.
And so this investigator that we mentioned, she did not arrive on scene till 6:27 p.m. So nearly 6 hours after the body was discovered, she arrived.
Yes.
And the body was laying supine, stretched out
Yes.
in front of the suitcase.
Yes.
Now you examined and assessed the body of Mr. Torres at the time of the autopsy.
Yes.
And you said that the body was ambient temperature.
Yes.
Is that the normal air temperature we're in today?
Whichever environment you're in. Yes.
So the body was not stored in a cooler for 24 hours.
No, the body was stored in the cooler, but in the mornings when we get there, the bodies are brought out of the cooler.
Okay. How long had the body been out of the cooler before it was examined by you? Do you know?
Most likely an hour to an hour and a half.
Now you said that the lividity was in the back, correct?
There's lividity in the back and also on the left side of the body as well.
And you agree the body is stored at the morgue on its back.
Correct.
Now, were you aware of the last time that Miss Boone, my client, actually saw her boyfriend alive or observed him in the video, in the suitcase by video from the phone?
I think in the report it was around 12:30 or 1 in the morning, somewhere around there.
Have you looked at either one of those videos from her phone?
I briefly saw one that the detective showed me.
Do you know if that was the 2-minute video or the 22nd video?
I believe it was the shorter one.
Okay. So would it be fair if I said the time last seen was around 11:30? Would you dispute that or?
No.
Okay. So really, from the time, I guess it was 11:30 that evening with the videos, and then you understood that the body was found around 12 hours later the next day or so. Would you agree that the death occurred sometime within those two periods of time?
Yes.
We don't know exactly when that is.
Yeah.
So it would be a guess if we tried to speculate about that.
Yes.
Now, considering the 3,000 autopsies, how many cases have you ruled the cause of death as positional or postural asphyxia?
A handful of times. It's not very common.
So about 5 times or less?
Yes.
Not very common that
And we're
people
going
play
to talk
hide and
about
seek in a
environmental
suitcase and die.
suffocation in a little bit, but let's talk about this positional asphyxia component. What was your ruling in those 5 cases that you ruled that it was positional asphyxia? What was your ruling in terms of your diagnosis?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to relevance.
Approach.
He's going to try and say that maybe in the other 5 cases she had that they were all accidental or suicidal or I don't know,
Sustained.
sustained.
Doctor, you're familiar with Dr. DeMaio, Vincent DeMaio's textbook of forensic pathology.
Yes.
Would you agree that that's authoritative?
I'm sorry.
Would you agree that's authoritative or well-accepted book?
Yes.
Environmental suffocation is a lack of oxygen. You would agree?
Yes.
Now, how many of those cases of the 3,000 that you've done where you found environmental suffocation?
Probably 2 to 3.
So very few?
Yes.
In a positional asphyxia case, that's kind of an example, like you get stuck in a hole and as you breathe, you sink deeper into the hole or it tightens.
It can be anything that impairs the actual physical aspect of breathing. So that could be if the neck is flexed very much forward, so that way cutting off the air supply up towards the top of the head. That could be something compressing around the torso, so not being able to take a full breath. So those are examples of
Or another example may be falling out of a tree stand and getting suspended upside down,
yes,
or the majority of the blood gets in the top half of the body.
yes.
Would you agree in those type situations that the deaths occur fairly quickly, usually within an hour?
They can. It depends again on the situation.
Now, you said Mr. Torres was 5'2" and 103 pounds.
Yes.
Do you know how big the suitcase was that Mr. Torres was in?
I don't have the exact measurements with me.
So if I told you the measurements, you wouldn't know one way or the other? What they were?
No, I think they were described to me and I saw the pictures from the scene, and I was able to review crime scene photos to see what the actual suitcase was like.
Okay. Do you know the crown to rump length of Mr. Torres?
No.
Crown to rump
Did you
length.
do any
It's like a roast.
demonstrative study on the suitcase to determine what kind of spacing he would have inside that enclosure?
No.
And you don't know the position that Mr. Torres or his orientation at the time that he was in the suitcase was?
Again, I favor a fetal position, but again, I didn't observe him in the suitcase.
But you don't know exactly what the positional component was that caused or what led you to believe caused his death.
Correct. I mean, based on his stature and what the suitcase was, he would have had to have flexed at the hips and knees to be able to fit into the suitcase.
So based on what you've said, you would agree you didn't know how much Mr. Torres would have been able to move and stretch his various extremities inside the suitcase, do you?
No.
So you would agree that his repositioning inside the suitcase would have been easier if he didn't have so much alcohol in his bloodstream?
I don't know that I would agree with that.
Excuse me?
I don't know that I would agree with that.
Well, you said his fine motor skills would be impaired by the alcohol.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you meant his ability to just move.
To reposition himself inside this, that would be limited to some degree by the alcohol he consumed.
It could be. I mean, that's not really a fine motor skill. But
Okay. Or the use of his hands to unzip the suitcase would
Sure.
be affected by the alcohol that he had consumed.
Sure, that could be.
Okay. Now, the environmental suffocation deals with the lack of oxygen.
Yes.
Correct? And due to that insufficient oxygen that we breathe in the air, so you essentially run out of the oxygen in the space.
Yes.
So I guess years ago, how this sometimes would occur was a child would somehow get into an old refrigerator and it would be enclosed. So it was airtight and eventually you would run out of oxygen.
Yes.
You would agree with that?
Yes.
And I think you said the normal makeup of air has about 20% oxygen.
Yes.
She looks familiar. I think not from another trial. She looks like Melora Hardin, who played Jan in The Office, who played Michael's girlfriend. You remember? So I nominate Melora Hardin to play her in the movie version of this. I think, unless she was in another trial that you guys know of.
So we had either a decrease in the oxygen levels or a low concentration of oxygen.
Yes. Yes. And also, keep in mind that while he's in there, every time he's exhaling, he's pushing out carbon dioxide. Okay, so again, whatever oxygen is there is most likely diminished because it is an enclosed space. It doesn't have to be no oxygen, but it's decreased from what we would have in a normal room. But every time that he's exhaling, there's more carbon dioxide that's in that space as well. So that displaces any oxygen that might be there too.
So what volume of air do we inhale and exhale in a normal breath at rest?
Well, it depends. I mean, you can take a deep breath, you can take a shallow breath. It depends. And then there's also the rate at which people breathe. So that's variable.
So if it was average, would you say 500 milliliters on average?
Depends on the person.
Well, would you agree that at rest, you take a normal number of breaths per minute of 12 to 14?
That would be considered the normal range, yes.
So 6 to 7 liters per minute
Yes.
at rest? Do you know the volume of room air contained in that suitcase?
No.
Do you know how porous the fabric of that suitcase was?
No.
Did you run any tests on the suitcase?
No.
It's not her job.
Were you
She's a medical
aware
examiner.
that the suitcase, the lock on it or the zipper on it was broken? The pull handles were broken.
Yes, I did know that.
Do you agree if there is a portion of the zipper that's open, that air can travel in and out of that space?
Yes.
Yeah, in space this big that he can get
Do you know
two
what
fingers
the
out.
anticipated exchange of gases would be through that fabric?
No.
Do you know if, the suitcase was out in the rain and it rained, do you know whether or not rain or the liquid would pierce the interior?
I don't know.
So from what I gather, no studies were done on the suitcase.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So we
If
don't
you're
know
confused about
that's
who's
a
on the stand, I have it scrolling along the bottom of the screen for you. This is the medical examiner who did the autopsy of George. So if you're ever confused, just look to the bottom of your screen. I'm here to help.
busted, what exchange of air could go in and out?
Correct.
I think you said there are physiological effects once the value or percentage of oxygen is decreased from the norm.
Yes.
You said 8 to 10%, you become unconscious,
Yes.
and then a value of less than 8%, death occurs.
For most people. Yes.
Excuse me.
For most people.
And the normal oxygen saturation in adults and children is 95 to 100%.
Yes.
So if it decreases, the oxygen decreases less than 10%, someone would lose consciousness and die within less than 30 minutes.
So that's hard to give a time frame on that. Studies that have been done shown if the oxygen content is anywhere from 4 to 6, unconsciousness can occur in less than a minute, death within minutes. But those have been empirical studies.
So, and I know that's kind of, maybe you tell me, that's kind of why you gave the two different diagnoses, the environmental and the positional, is because the environmental may have had an effect or the positional may have had an effect. You're not sure, so you listed them both.
It's not that I'm not sure. I think that both mechanisms were at play at the same time, and that's not unusual in deaths, is there can be multiple factors occurring at the same time.
But you don't know the,
She's solid. You can't trip her up, dude. Mr. Counselor Owens, I don't think you can trip her up. She's a very experienced witness. She's testified 75 to 80 times. She looks at the jury. She has a very nice ASMR voice. She's very easy to understand. You're not going to be able to trick her or trip her up, in my opinion, but you can keep trying because you really don't have a lot to work with. So, I mean, I feel bad. You're doing a good job with what you have, but you might want to quit while you're not ahead.
percentages, 50% for one or 70% for one, 30 for the other. You don't know.
No.
But you would agree in concert, if these two causes, the positional as well as the environmental, if they were acting in concert, that would render a relatively short amount of survival time.
I can't say.
You just don't know.
No.
Now, we talked about these blunt force injuries, correct?
Yes,
Okay. Would it be fair to the jury to say that there were no broken bones?
there were no broken bones.
And it would be fair to say that the blunt force injuries on his body that the jury has seen here today did not contribute to the cause of his death.
Not likely.
And I think you didn't put that anywhere in your report. That it
No.
did not,
I included it in my report. I did not include it on the death certificate.
as the reason or cause, contributing cause of the death.
Correct.
There's not enough room on the death certificate to write down every single bruise, but again, you know, he's doing the best he can. Yeah, he's doing better than I
Judge,
thought too.
Can I put up a couple
MBM.
of those exhibits?
Attorney Adam Lally wants to know.
Are you aware that there was a baseball bat that was gathered in the evidence in this case?
I didn't hear about that until later.
Till the trial started?
When did you first learn about the baseball?
That might have been around the time that I was sitting for a deposition, but I can't quite
You know when your
remember.
deposition was taken?
I don't have the file folder. I don't know when I was deposed.
I'm going to show you this exhibit. This is it's number 14. And this composite exhibit is state's exhibit, I believe, number 13. This is picture number 14. You see the, you said they were circular type injuries.
Yes.
And you've seen a regular baseball bat or a kid's baseball bat.
Yes.
A wooden bat. And if you were to swing that bat and hit someone, hit somebody's body or hit a suitcase and the blunt force, that would be a linear line across that person.
It could be depending on the position of the body, the position of the suitcase, and the position or how the object came in contact.
What is a linear injury mean?
So linear injury is if you think,
Yeah, doing
you know,
both.
linear, it's more like a line.
Now, if you took the,
There's a little eye roll there. Did you see that? Did you catch her eye roll? Linear is like a line. Watch this.
In contact.
what is a linear injury mean?
So linear injury is if you think, you know, linear, it's more like a line.
Now, if you took the barrel of the bat, the very end of the barrel of the bat, and you poked into the suitcase with the barrel of that bat, would those spots there in this exhibit, is that consistent?
That's compatible with that. Yes,
Excuse me?
that's compatible.
And then here's a close-up. This is picture number 15. Again, a close-up. Same question. Would that be consistent with poking the suitcase, if he's in the suitcase at the time, thrusting the barrel of that bat?
Would it be consistent with thrusting the barrel of the bat while he's in the suitcase? If she says yes, that doesn't really help your client. They didn't test the bat. You're right. She's emotionless.
Yes, it's compatible with that.
That doesn't help her. Poke. Are you saying Sarah poked him with the bat as opposed to hitting
Now, I
him?
want to draw your attention to the cardiovascular system. Do you have your report?
I do.
Okay. You describe the proximal third of the left anterior descending coronary artery having greater than a 75% narrowing of the lumen due to its centrically placed firm yellow-white fibrolipid atherosclerotic plaque.
Yes.
And is that pretty much verbatim with what you said in the report?
Yes.
He's going to say he had a
And
heart
that
attack 'cause he had
terminology is
a blockage?
synonymous with a single vessel, high-grade atherosclerotic coronary artery disease.
Yes.
Oh,
And in that
interesting.
location, it's kind of a classic location for what people refer to as the widowmaker,
The
Yes.
widowmaker.
because of the location in that vessel that supplies most of the circulation to the left ventricle.
Yes.
The widowmaker has entered the chat. It's the most common heart disease in men. That's why they call it the widowmaker. That's going to be the defense. He died from heart disease. He died of a heart attack because of his blockage. He didn't die from anything she did. That's interesting.
If you had a spasm in that artery, that could nearly totally obstruct the lumen and cause a fatal heart attack, could it not?
It could cause a dysrhythmia. Yes.
I'm sorry,
A dysrhythmia or an abnormal beating of the heart.
but that could kill him.
It could.
Good. Yeah, that's
The lumen
I
is
mean-
the inside space of the tubular structure of
Yes,
that, and so that was blocked over 75%.
it was. But there was no evidence of myocardial scarring. So when the vessels become blocked, you prevent blood from getting to the muscle of the heart. So there was no evidence that there was any scarring. There was no evidence that there was anything that happened acutely. When that happens, we can see changes in the actual muscle of the heart. So there were no changes suggestive of that.
Well, let me ask you something. If you were to get out of the suitcase on his own and he would have passed out or fell asleep on the couch and she would have woken up the next day about that time and came down, and he was dead on the couch.
but that's not what
You
happened.
did this autopsy. Would it be fair to say that in your ruling on cause of death, that single vessel coronary artery osculosclerosis would be your probable cause of death?
It could be, but any sort of injury overrides natural disease if the injury is significant, right? So you don't have to be a perfectly healthy person to have trauma and die. So it's very common that we see people that have
Bless you.
injuries for whatever reason, but also have a lot of natural disease.
The judge often stops to say God bless you to anybody who sneezes in the courtroom. I think that was the judge. I'll take this back.
Right? So you don't have to be a perfectly healthy person to have trauma and die. So it's very common that we see people that have
Bless you.
injuries for whatever reason, but also have a lot of natural disease. But we look at it as the injuries override
Yes.
the natural disease, because especially atherosclerotic disease, that's considered long-term. Right? So that's been going on for years and years. People walk around with that all the time. So what's different is that we have trauma, and so that overrides natural disease. And sometimes natural disease can contribute, but again, it depends on the individual. It depends on the circumstances.
So absent the
Yes, the manner
Positional
of death on the death certificate was homicide. She ruled it a homicide. Asphyxiation, positional asphyxiation, sorry, was the cause of death.
asphyxia or the environmental asphyxia, and he was dead, and you did the autopsy, it would be fair to say that you would determine this was a natural death from an isolated coronary heart disease, would you not?
It would depend on the circumstances. Again, I can't speculate on this case because I know what I know about
If
it.
you had nothing else, the widowmaker would have caused his death, or you would have to have assumed, having nothing else, that would have caused his death.
I most likely would have given him
I mean-
cardiovascular disease.
Now, this ethanol metabolism that we talked about earlier, and there's a question about you believing he was in the elimination phase, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that Jorge Torres, the decedent, was in the elimination phase since the blood ethanol was below the vitreous value?
Yes.
Given the vitreous value was a 213, is it justified in saying the decedent's blood ethanol level was at least a 0.213 prior to starting the elimination phase?
Yes.
And now you know that the normal elimination rate is, I believe, a 0.015% per hour.
Yes.
Is that standard?
It's an estimate.
And so we have a difference of a 0.138 to the 213. So roughly 5 hours of elimination. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
So in other words, you would agree there's a short interval where the vitreous and the blood are identical.
Yes.
And then the blood drops beneath the vitreous value as ethanol is metabolized in the blood.
Yes.
So is it fair to say, given the significant difference in the blood and the vitreous ethanol values, that the true vitreous and blood ethanol level had to be much higher than what is reported in your report at the time that he passed?
At the time that he passed? No, this is reflective of the time that he passed.
Say again?
This is reflective, the 0.139, that's reflective of the time that he passed. There's not metabolism after death
Okay.
of the alcohol.
All right.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So that means that in the John O'Keefe case, at autopsy, his blood alcohol content was 0.28. And that is what it was at the time of his death. That's what this medical examiner just told us.
Let me, what I'm saying is, he could have been, prior to that time of passing, he could have, his blood alcohol level would have been much higher.
It was at least at the same level as the
At least the
vitreous.
two,
Yes.
at least the 213.
Yes,
It could have been much higher.
it could have been, yes.
Judge, if I can approach.
You may.
This is defense composite exhibit for identification, J.
Has the state seen it?
Yes.
She totally self-snitched, little green. I was thinking about this too.
We
So
stipulate J into evidence.
It was pre-marked as defense J, will be received into evidence without objection as defense 1.
Sarah's a self-snitcher.
You may.
Ma'am, there's 5 photographs, just straight from the office. First one is number 5. What is this depict?
So that's the left hand. So you're looking at the outer surface of the hand, the knuckles, and 3 of the fingers.
Bruise there on his top of his left hand?
Yes.
Right, and the same for picture number 4.
So that's the same, just a little bit further away and without a scale.
And then here is picture number 3.
So now you're looking at the thumb and the index finger.
And then shows some bruising on the hand.
Yes.
And then here's picture number 2.
So what you're seeing here is, from the scene, our investigators put brown bags over the decedent's hands. And we collect evidence at the time of the autopsy. So at the scene, brown bags are put on the hands to preserve any evidence. And so that's why you're seeing,
Remind me, were John O'Keefe's hands bagged? I don't think so. Jenny, yes, hire the ME for the retrial. Also, will they allow the video and evidence? Yeah, the video is totally coming in. There are 2 videos, I think, from her phone that she took. Or there's a shorter one and a longer one.
This, because this is a picture that we take, we cut the bag open and we take a picture to show exactly what the hands look like.
You agree there's the bruising here on the
Yes,
back of the
there.
hand, and also up around the knuckle area?
Yes.
Near the fingers, and also on the section here?
Yes.
And then here's the last picture, number 5, which again is the left hand,
Yes.
showing the bruising on the top of the hand as well as the knuckle area.
Yes.
Thanks, Patty. Hit the like.
Thank you, Doctor.
Dwight.
Any redirect
Were
exam,
Colin's hands bagged?
you may proceed.
You were asked several questions on cross-examination about the alcohol level in this case. And I believe there was a term, metabolic phase or elimination phase. Could you just explain for us
Thank you.
what that is?
Sure. So in the toxicology testing, there's 2 different levels that I ordered for levels of alcohol. One is they look in the blood to see the level of alcohol. The other is in what's called vitreous fluid or eye fluid. And we look at both areas because that can give us an idea of whether somebody is metabolizing through the alcohol or whether it's still rising. It just gives us an idea sometimes of how close to death they were when, the ingestion of alcohol happened. But basically, the level in the eye fluid trails behind what we see in the blood. There will be a small point in time, as we discussed earlier, that they will be almost the same. But you can just think of it as the blood alcohol goes up, and then a brief period of time later, the alcohol in the eye fluid will start to show. So again, it's just to give us an idea of whether somebody is metabolizing or whether they're still, the level is still rising, or if they're still, intaking alcohol.
So the result in this case was indicative that George Torres's level was coming down.
Yes.
And I think some of the math was a little bit difficult to follow on the fly. But with that rate of dissipation, would it be fair to say that he would have been in that suitcase for approximately 5 hours, because he couldn't be drinking whilst in the suitcase, that we're seeing this rate decrease between these 2 levels?
Well, you have to be careful how you interpret it, because, the numbers that I have from toxicology testing, that's from one point in time. Right? We're collecting those specimens at the time of the autopsy. So that's only one point in time. It's possible, but I can't say for certain. All I can tell you is that at some point in time, his blood alcohol was at least the higher level that we saw in the vitreous fluid. So if, the calculation of the 5 hours, that's an estimate, because again, everyone's a little bit different. But I think it's reasonable to say 5 hours. Yes, that's within reason to say that.
And obviously a pretty obvious point, but we don't continue to metabolize alcohol after death.
Correct.
You were asked about studies or tests being performed on the suitcase in this case.
Correct.
Would the presence of objects in that suitcase also affect the length of time a person may have survived in that suitcase?
I guess if there were a lot of other objects in there, that maybe could, occlude the mouth or nose, or maybe if that means if there's more stuff in the suitcase, there's less room for the person. So I guess.
Have we heard about any stuff in the suitcase other than paper? I mean, interesting. Did they already put the clothes in there that they were going to donate to the Goodwill? Inquiring minds.
Yes.
Another variable that would also be present would be the opening of that zipper, would it not?
Yes.
So if the zipper was further open, potentially more oxygen could be coming into that area. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, there could be more oxygen coming in, but that's always the question is, would it be enough? Right? Because you can still have oxygen there, but it may not be enough. And again, that I talked about before.
And there would be no way to know exactly how far that zipper was
Syringe, yes.
potentially forced open.
Correct.
Yeah, a tie and a syringe. I didn't hear about the clothes yet, Patty, but maybe
Can this witness be released?
it was a Valium
Yes.
syringe, remember?
Yes, Judge.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Can the parties approach for a moment?
All right, approach. If your sound is skipping, I don't think it is for anybody else, but if yours is, just refresh your browser. Unless everybody hears my sound skipping.
Members of the jury, it's 11:01. We did get a bit of a later start this morning due to those security issues. Do any of y'all need to take a break at this point in time? Raise your hands if you do. All right, court seeing no hands. State, you may call your next witness.
Yes, diazepam is the generic form of Valium.
Yes.
All right. Get to FF a little bit here. We're just a little, not too far behind, just a little tiny
We'll
bit.
bring you back in as quickly as take up with counsel outside of your presence. Members of the jury, I have a matter I've got to take up with counsel outside of your presence. I promise it won't take too long. We'll bring you back in as quickly as possible. Again, same instruction I've given you previously. Please don't conduct any independent or investigation or research regarding the persons, places, things, or charge involved, and do not have any conversations among yourselves or anyone else about those things. We'll bring you back in as promptly as possible. Thank you.
It's been brought up, the Valium syringe. We heard about that maybe in openings. I'm sure they're going to have a witness talk about it. I know, right, Mike? The Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial was way before my time. But yeah, that would have been a lot of fun. That was around my time my sister started getting into law treatment. She's like, these lawyers are talking about the case. And because we would talk about it amongst ourselves all the time anyway. She's like, you should see this lawyer with purple hair. She's so amazing. You should do this. And there's this panel of lawyers and it's called Rakita. And he's got like all these lawyers on and they're talking about the case. You should do that. I'm like, why would I ever do that? I wouldn't even know how to do that. And fast forward to today, here I am. Crazy how life works out sometimes, huh?
Judge, James Owens here, and I'm here with Sarah Boone. The first exhibit is State's Exhibit F for identification. It is the title Stipulation Victim Identification, and it is signed by Mr. Jorge Torres, Sarah Boone, and myself, October 2nd, 2024.
And the other stipulation?
The other is a stipulation of FDLE report, again signed by Dave Cacciatore Jr., Sarah Boone, and James Owens. It is it's listed as identification for identification States Exhibit N. It is a two-page FDLE laboratory report generated June 3rd of 2020.
Can you approach with both of those documents, please?
You're funny. Dishonorable Kim Jong Kanoni says the Free Sarah Boone supporter with the they're not intentional sign was raising hell outside this morning.
State, anything else to add over and above what Mr. Owens identified?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Boone, good morning. You were previously sworn earlier today. I hold in my hand two stipulations. The first stipulation, pre-marked as State's Exhibit F, reads Stipulation of Victim Identification. Reads as follows. The Assistant State Attorney, Dave Cacciatore Jr., the defendant, Sarah Boone, as well as his lawyer, we have a scrivener's error there, James.
Scrivener's error.
Sylvia?
Sullivan.
Scrivener's
Okay.
error has
Sul-
entered the chat. And the assistant district attorney, the one with the sartorial splendor, his name's Dave Cacciatore, like chicken cacciatore. I love this for us. Pop-Tarts, Cacciatore, Pop-Tarts, Cacciatore, Dr. Pepper, Scrivener's errors.
Sullivan Owens stipulate that the identity of the deceased in this case is George Torres. Signed the 2nd day of October, 2024. Ma'am, have you had the opportunity to go over this stipulation with your attorney?
Yes,
Do you understand what this stipulation means?
yes,
Are you freely and willingly entering into this stipulation?
I am.
Did anyone force you, threaten you, or coerce you to enter into this stipulation?
No,
All right, the court accepts this stipulation. How do we want to handle the little issue with regard to his lawyer as opposed to her lawyer?
Just cross it off
I'm
and
fine
write.
with
Everyone
the
initial it.
court making an edit to scratch out his and insert her if that's acceptable with the defense.
Acceptable?
Yes.
Ma'am, is that acceptable to you as well?
it is.
All right, thank you. The court will make that handwritten interlineation, removing his and adding
They're just going
her.
to stipulate, 13 flag says, I don't understand. They're going to stipulate that the victim inside the suitcase is in fact George Torres. So they don't need to have any information or any testimony to show that the victim found in the suitcase who is deceased is George Torres. See? No, it's not a hearing about a typo. It's a hearing about a stipulation. They're stipulating George Torres is the victim. We don't have to have testimony on that. We don't need someone to come in here and lay the foundation to establish that he was indeed the victim. Save some time. It means they're just agreeing to it. Okay. Got it. Got it. Everybody all set with that? All right. Moving on.
State, do you seek, we'll move this into evidence in front of the jury, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving now to what was pre-marked as state's N. Ma'am, this is a stipulation of FDLE report. It reads, the Assistant State Attorney, Dave Cacciatore Jr., and defendant Sarah Boone, as well as his lawyer, James Sullivan Owens,
Should say her lawyer.
stipulate to the admissibility into evidence at trial of the FDLE lab report authored by Carolina Benito on June 3, 2020. It bears Mr. Cacciatore's signature, your signature, and the signature of your attorney, Mr. Owens. Have you had the opportunity to review this stipulation with your attorney?
Yes,
Have you had the opportunity to review the 2-page FDLE report that will be attached to it?
yes,
Do you understand what this stipulation means?
yes,
Are you entering into this stipulation freely and voluntarily?
yes,
Did anyone force you, threaten you, or coerce you to enter into this stipulation?
no,
All right, the court accepts this stipulation. Any issue with striking through his and adding her state?
No, Your Honor.
No, sir.
All right, the court will
Scrivener's
make that
error.
interlineation as well. Anything else we need to address, state? I will return these to you for the purposes of moving them into evidence with regard to these two stipulations.
Yes, Your Honor.
So nothing else?
Nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Defense, anything else? All right, thank you very much. Anything else we need to address before we bring back in our panel?
No, sir.
No, Your Honor.
All right, let's go ahead and stand.
Okay, so they stipulated to a forensic lab report. I'm not sure what the lab report contains. By the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, it was a forensic lab report, so they don't need to have testimony on that. And it saves some time when the attorneys can agree. Isn't that great? Sober Hipster points out that Cacciatore's father was one of the attorneys that won the big tobacco lawsuit in 2006. So he must be he must have grown up uber wealthy. Nepo baby. If you know, you know. That's settled for tons of money. Plaintiff's lawyers work on contingency and they receive 1/3 of the settlement. Although if it's a huge class action, they might have been limited to fees in that case. So I don't want to misspeak. Mediocre chicken parm for the win. Thanks God. People are debating now, which is better, chicken parm or chicken cacciatore? We do that here. We do. We have at least 5 different conversations in the chat at all times going on. And each one of us can follow them because we are multitasking always.
You may proceed with your evidence and testimony presentation.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, we'd like to move what's been pre-marked for identification as states F, in states N into evidence?
Any objections?
No objection.
All right, what was pre-marked as states F will be received without objection as state 14. What's been pre-marked as states N will be received into evidence without objection at state 15.
IYKYK, Custom Shadow 3C, chicken parm, but not from D&E Pizza.
Thank you. Members of the jury, I'm going to read to you some stipulations along with an instruction. When the parties agree that certain facts are true, that is called a stipulation of fact. You must accept stipulated facts as having been proven. However, the significance of these facts, as with all facts, is for you to decide. In this case, the stipulated facts that you must accept as true are as follows. Stipulation of victim identification. The Assistant State Attorney, Dave Cacciatore Jr., and defendant, Sarah Boone, as well as her lawyer, James Sullivan Owens, stipulate that the identity of the deceased in this case is Jorge Torres. Stipulation of FDLE report. The Assistant State Attorney, Dave Cacciatore Jr., and defendant, Sarah Boone, as well as her lawyer, James Sullivan Owens, stipulate to the admissibility into stipulate into evidence at trial of the FDLE lab report authored by Carolina Benito on June 3, 2020. With that, State, you can call your next witness.
Meredith McCaskill.
So the jury has to accept what's been stipulated to as fact. They can't argue that it's not true back there, like a lot of these other facts that they need to weigh. And the jury is the finder of fact in every case, unless it's a bench trial, then the judge is the finder of fact. The judge instructs them on the law. He doesn't teach them the law like Auntie Bev wanted to do. He instructs them on the law. You're supposed to follow the law. But the jury is the finder of fact, except for those two facts that were just entered in by stipulation.
Please do swear or affirm the testimony you should give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Ma'am, good morning. Could you please take a seat and state and spell your name for the record for us?
My name is Meredith McCaskill, and it's spelled MEREDITH MCCASKILL.
Thank you. Mr. J, you may inquire.
Thank you. Where do you work, ma'am?
I am employed at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Orlando Regional Operations Center.
And is that also called FDLE?
Yes, it is.
And what do you do for FDLE?
I am a senior crime laboratory analyst in the biology DNA section.
And what is your educational background? We'll get into training and experience as well, but what's your educational background that allows you to do that job?
I have a Bachelor of Science in Biological Sciences from Clemson University and a Master of Science in Biomedical Forensic Science from the Boston University School of Medicine.
Boston has entered the chat.
And when did you first start working for FDLE?
I started at FDLE in April of 2011.
Did you have any prior work experience as a
Wicked smart.
forensic examiner of blood or biological or DNA evidence?
No, I did not.
So for the last 13 years, your experience has been with the FDLE.
Yes, that's correct.
And do you have any sort of in-house training and then continuing education that goes on as an employee at FDLE?
Yes. So when you become a crime laboratory analyst, you have to successfully complete a training program. This training program takes about 1.5 to 2 years. It covers all of our policies and procedures and manuals, reading textbooks and scientific articles, and performing a lot of in-house testing and training under the supervision of a qualified analyst.
I love my chat.
There's also written and oral examinations, and you have to successfully complete every part of that in order to work cases as a crime laboratory analyst. And then every year we have continuing education. So that's education that we need to do in order to stay current with new trends and technologies in the field.
Does the lab itself enjoy any accreditations, and what process, if so, does it go through to get them?
Yes, FDLE is accredited by an organization called ANAB. It's the American National Standards Institute National Accreditation Board. So we've been accredited for, I believe, over 30 years. It's a process where every 4 years they send people to come and inspect our lab, make sure that we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing according to our policies and procedures. And then we're also following national standards that have been set down. That's every 4 years. It's very in-depth. And then we have additional kind of like spot checks every year just to make sure that we are maintaining everything that we are supposed to be doing.
Have you ever given testimony in court about your opinion about serology analysis or DNA analysis?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
Approximately 35 to 40 times.
Have you ever not been allowed to give opinion testimony in those areas?
No, I have not.
She's a pro.
Can you tell us about the place, particularly within FDLE? Tell us about your workspace and what personal protection equipment you may wear when you're doing DNA analysis.
Yes. So in my workspace, I have what I call a clean side, which is where I keep all of my paperwork. And then I have my other side, which is used for actual screening of evidence items. So this is a surface where I can clean it with a detergent. I clean all of the instruments that I'm using. So scissors, markers to take notes, anything like that is cleaned with a detergent, both before I start and after I finish. And it's cleaned and maintained in between every item of evidence. So only one item of evidence is open at a time, and this is to minimize any potential contamination. So DNA from one item getting into DNA from a second item. I also wear what is called personal protective equipment. This includes a lab coat, face mask, gloves, and potentially a hairnet, depending on what type of evidence that I'm working with. And then the gloves are disposable, so they are changed before and after each item of evidence. It's also changed if I have to touch my computer to take notes, I change my gloves. If I have to touch another surface, I change my gloves. So it's a lot of procedures that we use in order to prevent my DNA from getting onto the item of evidence.
When DNA analysis is done, are instruments used to assist you in that process?
Yes, we have an instrument platform that we use that allows us to run the DNA in batches in a efficient manner. So there's multiple instruments that are used across the varying processes.
It's efficient.
And do these instruments generate paperwork that humans such as yourself can then go read and interpret?
Yes, it does.
Now, in this particular case, you are not the analyst who examined the items. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you review the information that is generated by the instruments used by the analyst who did this work in coming to your own conclusions?
I was the technical reviewer on this file, so I reviewed all of the documentation and the paperwork and also the original analyst report.
All right. Now, one of the items that is said to have been analyzed was a DNA card. Are you familiar with what that is?
Yes, I am.
And can you tell the jury what that is?
Usually it's referred to as a DNA card or a blood stain card, and that's just a card where somebody can spot blood, usually human blood, on it and dry it down. Then the analyst can take a cutting of that stained area in order to generate a DNA profile.
And is that typically the manner in which a decedent or a dead person's DNA sample is provided to the lab for analysis?
Yes, that's a very common thing that we see in decedents.
And can you explain to the jury how it is an analyst such as yourself would take that blood stain on a portion of the DNA card and develop a DNA profile?
Yes, so it usually is blood stained on the card, so you can identify that stain visually, take a cutting of that stained area, and then place that cutting into a sterile tube, which is then sent through the DNA process. So that's adding chemicals and heat in order to break the cells open and release the DNA into the solution, and then running it through the rest of the procedures where we determine about how much DNA is in the sample, make millions of copies of our specific areas of interest, and then generate a DNA profile that can be used for comparison to any questioned items in the case.
Do you use some sort of commercial kit to develop DNA profiles on known items such as this?
Yes, we do.
Approximately how many locations back in 2020 would have been tested on this DNA card?
In 2020, it was 21 locations.
All right. And in going through this process, is there a process that amplifies the amount of DNA?
Yes, there is.
Can you describe that?
Yes, so we need to amplify or make millions of copies of the specific areas of interest that we're looking for. We don't want to make copies of the entire DNA molecule. We're just wanting to isolate those specific 21 areas and make copies of those specific areas in order to generate the DNA profile that we use in forensic DNA analysis.
And do you know what a short tandem repeat is?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
Short tandem repeat, we also call them STRs. That's just what we're looking for in the forensic DNA analysis. There are short areas of repeating DNA pieces. So for example, at somebody's DNA profile at a specific location, you can have a set of 16 repeats and a set of 17 repeats. And that's just this one little piece of DNA, and it repeats 16 times. And then you have a piece that repeats 17 times. And it's the number of repeats that is different from person to person.
And you said you might be a 16 at one spot and 17. Let's just be clear on what we're talking about. On one particular location, or well, all of them, do you get DNA from mom and dad? Could you explain that?
Yes, so you get DNA from your parents. So it's inherited. You get half of your DNA from your mom and half from your dad. So when I'm talking about the short tandem repeats and the example of a 16 and a 17, that could mean that you got a set of 16 repeats from one parent and a set of 17 repeats from the other parent. So it's just the copies that you get from your parents.
And you might happen to have 16 from each.
Yes, that's also a possibility.
All right, and so the chemicals end up copying about, you said 21 areas in 2020?
Yes, so there's 21, and then we look at several areas that are on the gender marker. So it was 3 areas on the gender markers.
And each of these locations will come up with some sort of number like 16, 17, 4, 4, so on and so forth.
Yes, that's correct.
Were you able, in reviewing the instrumentation data in this case, was the DNA profile that was said to have come from Mr. Torres, was there able to be a full DNA profile at those 21 locations developed?
Yes, a complete profile was obtained for that sample.
Now, can you tell us what a buccal or a buccal swab, sometimes people call it each, which way is the right way?
I usually use the word buccal, but buccal is not incorrect either.
All right,
Thank
why
you
is
for
that?
settling that bet. You can say buccal swab or buccal swab. I say buccal swab. Both pronunciations are correct. She just told us, the expert.
It's just a swab that we can use as a reference sample from a person. So it looks, all of our swabs just kind of look like a long Q-tip with only one end. And then you just take that cotton tip in and rub it on the interior of your mouth to get a good DNA sample. You have a lot of cells on the inside of your mouth and a lot of saliva. So that's a good source to use for a known sample from a person.
And these long Q-tips, I believe, as you described, are they put into a box that is designed in a way so that the Q-tip doesn't touch the edges of the box?
Yes, I've seen it in boxes like that, but I have also seen it where they've been put back into the original paper packet container. So either method is fine.
And did the FDLE in this particular case, in the data that you reviewed, was there buccal swabs represented as being from the defendant, Sarah Boone?
Yes, there was.
And in the process that you've briefly described for the jury already, can you just tell us if it's different in any way to take a part of that cotton swab to develop a DNA profile than a piece of the DNA paper?
No, it's the same process. With the buccal swabs, I'm just taking a small cutting of the cotton area of the swab, placing it in a tube, and then running it through the exact same DNA process.
I'll allow it,
Was a
Andrea.
full profile at the 21 locations
Buccal
able to be
mommy.
developed for the buccal swabs represented as being from Ms. Boone?
Yes, a complete profile was obtained for that sample.
Were there also what we call unknown samples that were examined in this case?
Yes, there were.
And can you describe the difference between a known and an unknown sample for the jury?
Yes, a known sample is a sample from a specific person. So that's like the example of a buccal swab. I know that sample came from that individual, and I can use that as a way to determine that particular person's DNA profile. An unknown sample is just a sample where we don't know whose DNA or if there is any DNA on that sample at all. So those are question items that can be, once a DNA profile is obtained from that item, can be compared to the known profiles obtained from individuals.
And in this case, was there an unknown item labeled as DNA swabs representative coming from Mr. Torres's fingernails?
I believe it was fingernail clippings from Mr. Torres, yes.
All right, and typically, I know you didn't do the work on this particular case, but in reviewing the notes and in your experience, do these DNA samples from fingernail clippings come in as swabs, like a buccal swab?
So sometimes they can come in as swabs, but other times they come in as just fingernail clippings. So taking the clippers and just cutting off the ends of the fingernails. And then I've also seen it where they've been scraped using pointed sticks.
And so if there is a swab that came in represented as being from the fingernails, then that would go through the process of use as you previously described for the buccal swabs.
Yes, that's correct.
Hilarious,
If it comes
Robbie.
in as
Buckle up,
fingernails or
Buttercup.
scrapings, do you all have to make your own swabs?
Yes, that's correct.
And how would you go about doing that?
We have prepackaged swabs in our lab. We can then use some sterile deionized water and drip that onto the end of the cotton tip to make it a little bit moist so that it can pick up any DNA that is left on the item. And then we just swab the surface of the item, allow the swab to dry, and then cut it and place it into a tube for the DNA process. So we're just making our own swabs at that point.
And was there a profile obtained from what was represented as being a DNA sample from Mr. Torres's fingernail clippings?
Yes, there was.
And did it match either of the two known profiles that we've just discussed here this morning?
Yes, it did.
Which one?
Mr. Torres.
Were there any results indicating foreign DNA on this item?
No, there were no DNA results foreign to Mr. Torres obtained from either set of fingernail clippings.
Likewise, was there something examined in this case represented to be swabs or DNA samples from Ms. Boone, the defendant's fingernails?
Yes.
Okay, so they're pointing out here that there was no DNA of Sarah underneath George's fingernails, meaning he did not lay hands on her. That's what they're trying to say. So he did not lay hands on her and instigate any sort of physical abuse or contact with her.
Those were swabs that were sent represented as being from her fingernails.
And so just like the buccal swabs that come in as a Q-tip, and then you would test that in a similar manner?
Yes, that's correct.
Was a profile able to be developed from what was represented as being swabs from Ms. Boone's fingernails?
Yes, there was.
And did that profile match either of the two known profiles that we've been discussing this morning?
Yes, it did.
And whose was that?
Miss Boone's.
Now,
And she had
in
no
regards to
DNA
both
under his fingernail. She had no DNA of his under her fingernails either.
these last items that we've talked about, the fingernail swabs from each Mr. Torres and Ms. Boone. Is it expected that their profile would be developed from DNA swabs from their fingernails?
Yes, it is. All of those samples were represented as being from those particular individuals, so their DNA is expected to be on those items.
Was there any DNA foreign to Ms. Boone on those samples that were representative as coming from her fingernails?
No, there were no DNA results foreign to Ms. Boone obtained from either set of fingernail swabs.
Now, with this amplification process that you've described, is it PCR?
Yes, it is.
How sensitive is it when a sample is taken from an unknown area such as fingernails?
The PCR process is pretty sensitive, and over the years, as the science has evolved and testing has changed, the process has become even more sensitive over the years.
And hypothetically, if two people are living together and are intimate partners, quite frankly, would you expect the intimate partner's DNA to show up on swabbings from their fingernails?
Yes, it's possible that their DNA would show up if they're in close contact with each other.
But in this particular case, after reviewing all of the instrumentation data, there was no DNA foreign to either of their fingernail clippers, both clippings or swabs from their fingernails, both Mr. Torres and Ms. Boone?
Yes, that's correct.
No other questions?
Any cross-examination?
Crazy, Dewey, right? Nobody's asked to see papers.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Once you develop a profile, are you able to take that profile and compare it to other possible DNA on objects or items?
Well, if it's a DNA profile that is obtained from a questioned item, we can compare that to profiles from known individuals.
And in this case, an example of that, if an object from an unknown source, you could take that and compare it to a known profile. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And if you get a match with that comparison, what can you take from that?
Just that is the DNA profiles are the same.
So if it's an object, let's say like a bat, and there's a DNA profile that's obtained from the bat, and it matches a known profile, could you make the conclusion that that person touched or handled that bat from the known profile?
No, I can't. There's nothing in the testing that we do at FDLE that will allow me to determine how any DNA ended up on an object or how long it's been on that object.
Now, you said
Safe travels,
in
Lindsay.
this case, what was sent for DNA comparison?
In this case, there was a bloodstain card or a DNA card represented as being from Mr. Torres, buccal swabs represented as being from Miss Boone, fingernail clippings from both hands represented as being from Mr. Torres, and then fingernail swabs from both hands represented as being from Miss Boone.
Those are the only items that were sent to your lab for comparison.
Those were the only items sent to the DNA lab, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions.
Any redirect examination?
No redirection can be excused as far as the state is concerned.
Defense?
Yes.
All right, ma'am, you're excused. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Brian wants to know, did they check our hoops? Funniest chat on YouTube.
State, may call your next
Prove
witness.
me wrong. Nothing funny. Rest in peace, George Torres, but we have to laugh or otherwise we're going to cry. All the time, every day, every case. We're FFing a little bit.
Record, please.
Get to real time.
First name is Janella, Junella.
Pretty
Last name is Wadden, UAD as in Delta, AN.
May it please the court?
May proceed, sir.
Where do you work, ma'am?
I'm currently employed with the Orange County Sheriff's Office here in Orlando, Florida.
And what does Sheriff Mina currently having you do?
I'm currently, my current position is a digital forensic examiner.
And how long have you held that position?
I just hit 6 years.
And can you tell us about, and we're going to break it down, education, training, and experience. Let's just talk about your education. What's your educational background prior to becoming a law enforcement officer? In particular, what is relevant to being a digital forensic examiner?
Oh, digital forensics.
I actually started in crime scene investigations with the Sheriff's Office. So I have a bachelor's in forensic science through the University of Central Florida. Upon transferring over to our digital forensics unit, I became a certified computer forensic examiner through the International Association of Computer Investigative Specialists.
And that's IACIS?
ISIS, yes.
Can we call it ISIS?
Yes.
How do you say it?
IASIS.
Yeah, no, don't
All
call it
right. I just want
ISIS.
to shorten it for today.
Yes.
All right, so IASIS. Tell us about that program that you went through with IASIS to become a digital forensics examiner.
Yes, the beginning portion of it is in classroom training. It's normally only hosted in 2 different locations around the world, one being here in Orlando, the other one normally being somewhere over in Europe. They actually just expanded a 3rd location over in Australia. So again, the first 2 weeks are in classroom training, normally with over 300 other students. And then the next 5 to 6 months are all a peer review type training where they give you problem sets on how to, it goes from basic education on computer forensics to how to recover data. Could be pictures, could be videos. You're not sure until you pass one step to move on to the next one to figure out what you're essentially what kind of questions you're going to get.
I love so many women in
All right.
STEM that we're seeing in a lot of trials we're
Take a
watching
break
lately.
from Education training.
Not in
One
Canton
second.
necessarily, or Massachusetts, but in every other trial we watch, Las Vegas, Florida, so many women in STEM that are testifying.
On February 23rd, 2020, were you called out to a scene?
Yes.
And does that happen from time to time as a digital forensic examiner, as opposed to your previous duties like CSI, which would always go to the scene?
Yes, as a digital forensic examiner, we are required to come out on scenes if requested.
May I approach the witness with E for identification?
You may.
Yes, what does she think about Celebrate? I want to know that too, Jessica.
Showing you E for identification, you recognize states E for identification?
Yes.
And how is it that you recognize that?
I recognize the front label or the portion filled out on the envelope with my handwriting, as well as evidence tape sealed, also initialed with my initials.
Chain of custody?
And the information on it includes like your
Shock and
case number
horror.
and some of the other information you just answered.
Yes, case number, date of collection, and the item description.
And what is said to be contained inside of that envelope?
An Apple iPhone Model XS with a pink case.
All right, and if I am not incorrect, I believe there's 2 sets of evidence tape on that item.
Yes.
Can you tell us about each set?
The first set, which is the red tape here, initially when I collect or sometimes when we receive items from crime scene investigators, the packaging necessarily doesn't have to be sealed just because the phone might have to be kept charge on prior to us receiving the phone. So in this case, I did collect the item from the residence. I brought it back to our office. And then once I was done with my exam, it later gets sealed, again, with my initials and dates. And if there's a, later on an evidence review or somebody needs to review the item again, if we need to do an additional examination, the package might be reopened and then resealed again, hence the blue tape here at the bottom.
All right, other than the blue tape, is that item and the packaging substantially in the same condition when you were done examining what is said to be contained inside?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
If you would, could you open up this package and, without showing it to the jury at this point, see if you recognize what's inside of the envelope?
I mean, the phone went from the scene into an envelope, sealed, and then went into the actual evidence place. It didn't wander around for weeks before it was logged in. I'm shocked.
Yes, there's a phone with a pink case inside.
Do you recognize that as the item that you collected from the scene that you went to on February 23rd, 2020, and then later examined?
Yes.
All right. So this scene, February 23rd, 2020, where is this scene?
I believe it's 4740, or can I refer to my report for the address or to the numerical?
If it would refresh your memory.
Yes.
Go ahead, and then when you're done refreshing your memory, let us know if your memory was refreshed.
Wild chain of custody here. No solo cups, no leaf blowers, no stop and shop bags.
Yes.
Your memory refreshed.
Yes.
What is your answer?
4748 Franz, not sure if I'm saying that correct, court, apartment number 3.
Now, I know you work for the sheriff's office in Orange County, but I still need to ask, is this in Orange County, Florida?
Yes.
All right. Now, you collected that item. May I move E for identification and evidence at this time?
Any objections?
No objection?
What was pre-marked as E will be received into evidence without objection. The state 16.
I mean, People who haven't watched the Karen
Did you do
retrial think we're
anything with that
crazy
item
for
while you
pointing
were
out
on
like
scene?
things that are like supposed to be done in every case. Somebody was in the chat the other day and he was like, why are you guys congratulating all these law enforcement people for just doing their jobs? And we're like, oh, you didn't watch the Karen retrial. Okay, let me explain.
Yes.
What is it that you did with that item while you were on scene?
I was requested to come out. I was informed from the detectives that the user of the device gave consent for us to download her phone. So I responded out, and once I located the phone, I immediately started to extract the data from the phone.
All right. So now let's talk about what tools you use to do that. I assume there's some software involved with this process.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your familiarity and the training that you had in regards to using that software back in the time of February 2020?
Yes. One of the main tools that we use for data extraction is called Cellbrite. I did obtain, again, transitioning to our digital forensics unit, I obtained 2 certificates with Cellbrite, which is an operator certificate, knowing how to operate the hardware and the extraction software, as well as a certificate in their physical analyzer software, which is more used for the analysis part. So once we download the phone, we get a digital file, which to us is a lot of data, which humans, we can't read. So their software basically makes it more readable for us humans, which we can then generate a report in different formats for review. So in this case, we used Cellbrite. They actually started to develop software for cell phone companies. So if you remember back in the day when you went to go upgrade your phone and you had to go into a brick and mortar store, they actually had the software to help transfer your old data from your old phone and transfer it to your new phone, like your contacts, your pictures, your videos, a lot of the data that you didn't want to lose when upgrading your phone. But they are now a predominantly digital forensics company, and they provide the software that we use to extract data off of digital devices.
And she's Cellbrite
Is there any
certified.
hardware?
She's certified in Cellbrite. Let's pay attention. In case you're not.
To use this software?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Right.
Yeah. To extract data off of digital devices.
And is there any hardware involved to use this software?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, in this case, and especially at that time, we had 2 options. There was a portable tablet. In this case, you can still use a computer, and they have sister software that mirrors the exact same software that's on the portable tablet. So in this case, I had my call-out laptop with the extraction software installed on it. And just like you would to connect your phone to, let's say, your computer to export photos or take photos off of your phone if you want to save them, we're doing essentially the exact same thing in the field where we're connecting it to our computer and we're letting the software pull all that data or the contents off of that phone.
When you were told that you had Miss Boone's password to her phone device, do you do anything to try and make sure that the data cannot be manipulated or destroyed from the outside world?
Yes, it's standard protocol. Like once we receive a phone, hopefully somebody did it before it's handed to us. But again, if we're responding out to the scene or we're the only ones that are interacting with the phone, we for sure try to, if we are given a passcode, we try to confirm the passcode. And then the phone is immediately put into airplane mode, which will disconnect it from any outside network. And we also try to ensure, because not always, once you place your phone into airplane mode, it doesn't always turn off your Bluetooth and or Wi-Fi connections. So we may go in and make sure that those settings are also disabled before we extract the data.
All right. Take us through this extraction process. I understand that there are many different levels of information that you can get depending on a lot of things that you'll tell us about. Can you tell us the level of extraction you were able to do on site with this cellular phone device?
On site.
Yes, for this specific phone, we were trying to minimally get the user data. Again, the stuff that you guys can see when you're looking through your phone, your calls, your messages, your pictures, your videos. And in this case, that's the level of support that the on-scene software that we're able to use is able to download from the phone, especially with having a password or passcode.
All right. So I think we're all familiar with Windows. I think Mac has its own special iOS operating system as well. Can you tell us about the operating system that was on this particular cellular phone device?
Yes, Apple has its own operating system, iOS if you have an iPhone, and of course, even if you have Android or Apple, you're constantly getting notifications saying it's time to update your phone to the newest software. So in this case, it's an iPhone, so it's running their shortened version of iOS.
Can you also extract data that has been quote unquote deleted from the operating system? And can you just tell us all about that?
Yes, it is sometimes a possibility. It's not always guaranteed, but we sometimes have more advanced tools that can potentially pull that data from the device. And then later, once we get that download, we can put it into that software and normally will give us indications on whether or not data has been deleted.
And so if a particular photograph or a Word document or some sort of file has been deleted from the operating system, may it still remain on the phone device or computer device?
Yes.
It may still be locatable with your software tools.
That is the hope. Again, not always guaranteed, but again, that's why we're trying to go in there and look for that the data behind the scenes to see if we can recover those artifacts. Yes.
Did you later?
So sometimes you can recover deleted stuff. Sometimes you can't with Celebrite. Let's hear if she can tell us when you can't.
Do another extraction of this phone device back in the office?
Yes.
And tell us if it is different in any way, how your software or hardware was different in doing it at the office.
Yes, in this case, we use, again, a more advanced tool, which is able to capture, the technical term is a full file system. So we're capturing that whole filing cabinet, you would say, of the data stored on the phone with, again, the probability to not only collect possibly deleted data, but also your systems information, application data, like your social media, messaging apps,
Researches?
everything aside from your normal user data, like your calls and messages and pictures and videos.
And what level of capture, and if you answered it in that, I'm sorry, what level of capture were you able to do?
Again, in this case, I was able to do the full file system back at the office. On scene, the technical term is an advanced logical or logical extraction, again, which encompasses your generic user data on your phone.
And the level of extraction you did at the office, does that encompass data that is outside of the operating system or in unallocated space?
It can include that data, yes.
Okay. Now, what kind of information can be generated by this computer software tool that you used to make it presentable for humans such as yourself or the members of the jury to review?
Yeah, in the software, it will place the data in data categories. So it's organized. We can, if we just want to search between messages, we can go in the messages category. If we want to look at logs, like maybe data that your phone's recording, like locations, app activity, that's also presented in its own data category. And it also has the ability to put all that data in chronological order in what they refer to as a timeline. So we can also see all that ongoing data in the timeline section. And if we need to, we can either narrow down to a small scope of time, or if it's requested, we can get all the data, all in that timeline to whoever wants to review it.
And for instance, if there's an entry on the timeline that says, April 1st, 2016, photograph ABC was taken. Are there separate folders that are generated by the software tool that has all the images, such as that still photograph, generated?
Yes, when we export it or generate like in a PDF version of that report, all that data is categorized in a PDF, but it also exports a copy of that same data, such as images and videos in separate subfolders. So if I just wanted to go look at the pictures from the phone directly, I could just go into that subfolder and just look at all thousands of images that might be exported from the phone.
And
Everybody
is
say
there
goodbye to
identifying
Anna.
information
Anna's
such
going
as
to
the
Block Island.
IMEI,
Bye-bye.
that is generated by the software tool? And can you tell us what these things are?
Somebody clip this.
Yes,
Somebody clip this for the Karen Reed case. Her testimony is excellent about Celebrite. And boom, there it is. Block Island is lovely this time of year. It's probably 78 degrees there today.
The IMEI is one identifier that your cell phone has to help authenticate it to your cell phone network. It also is like a serial number unique to your phone. And in this case, our software is able to read and report all those device identifiers from your phone, including an IMEI.
And do you take actual photographs of the cellular phone device, like the exhibit we just put into evidence, to document it before or after you do the extraction?
Yes, just like in crime scene, a cell phone digital evidence is essentially another form of evidence. So we always try to document the current state, condition, whether it's locked, unlocked, and if we, again, in this case, we were provided a passcode. So I normally like to photographically document the phone's identifiers or accounts that may be logged into the phone.
Prior to trial, were you asked to look at two different exhibits to see if they represented a portion of that timeline you described that can be put into the PDF report form, as well as some of the images and videos from this extraction that you performed on the device that's in evidence?
Yes.
Gorgeous place.
May I approach?
The funniest thing about Anna is that she actually waited 5 minutes. She subscribed and then waited
What we're
5
showing
minutes
you
before she
first
started
is
her
O for
trollish comments.
identification. Did you have an opportunity to review that this morning to make sure that the portion of the PDF and the images in a separate folder there were part of the extraction that you did on this device that we're talking about?
Yes.
And was that accurate?
Yes.
P for identification, is that another carve out of the PDF timeline as well as videos and photographs from that device?
Yes.
All right, this time the state will move O for identification.
YK.
With regard to states O.
No objection.
All right, what was pre-marked as states O will be received into evidence without objection as state 17.
70 on Block Island today.
Permission to publish?
You may.
That's okay. I have questions. If it's a burner account, she'll be back in 5 minutes. We have people for that. I can't as Light Bright expert, says Thomas. Look, I made a horsey. Remember Light Bright? I used to love Light Bright. Team Brittany, yep. You know.
Open up the file labeled extraction.
We're going to look at the Celebrite report now. Let's get back to the topic at hand. Can't see a damn thing. Maybe they'll zoom in. I'll full screen it for you.
Guess we don't get that longer. All right, so sorry about your neck. Looking at entry 31079, can we just go column through column and explain what we're looking at?
Yes, the first column normally is just an assigned number, just like a line item number for the report. Because again, this is an excerpt. There could be thousands and thousands of line items when you're looking at the entire timeline. So the far left-hand column is just a line item number, followed by again, the data category for whatever data you're looking at. In this case, there's a couple listed as application usage and then location data.
Let's talk about the column that has dates and times, and can you explain to us what UTC -5 means?
Yes. Another column, again, we're looking this at a timeline, so we want to know dates and times. So we'll include the date and time of the data that was recorded onto the phone. And this report was adjusted for our local Eastern Standard Time here in Orlando, Florida, so UTC -5.
And going up to the top line there, 31075, that indicates that there is a start time for the application com.apple.camera, and then going back to our original one, 31079, that's the end time. Can you tell us what that means?
Yes, so Apple is very good about recording activity on the directly from your device. When you open up a certain application, such as the camera, Apple is making note that you, in this case, it's indicating a start time. So you opened up your camera at 10:21:36.
Did she just say that Apple is really good about data? Did she really just say that? You mean it's accurate? Oh, hold on. We got to rewind that so that somebody like Joe Flipperhead can clip it. Hold on. Apple's very good about recording activity. Well, I want to ask her, if you go up and down steps and it says you went up and down, if it says that you went up and down steps, does that really mean that you went up and down steps? Or does that mean that you could have been waving your phone around or going over a hill in your car? I really need to know.
And then going back to our original one, 31079, that's the end time. Can you tell us what that means?
Yes, so Apple is very good about recording activity on the directly from your device. When you open up a certain application, such as the camera, Apple is making note that you, in this case, it's indicating a start time. So you opened up your camera at 10:21:36 p.m. And then you stopped using it, maybe closed it out or stopped recording at 10:21:38 p.m.
What
And
about the
in this-
Safari browser? If you open the Safari browser and you Google search something or you Safari browse search something, is it going to be an accurate timestamp? I need to know.
Portion of the PDF timeline, there does not appear to have been any videos or photographs captured while the camera was open. Is that accurate?
Based on that excerpt, I don't see a recorded media file.
All right. In the surrounding entries, can we just talk about what I would unfairly probably call spam of locations? What is going on there?
Again, if there's usage, application usage, or you're just in a really good location, or your device is just set to record locations wherever you are, your phone is also recording that data as well. And in some cases, like, again, your phone, if you have it set for your camera to record your location when you take a picture, again, like when you reopen that picture, it'll show you, hey, you were located at 2500 West Colonial Drive. That's that data that's being recorded in the background while you're using that application that it might have that permission to record that data.
Dippy, did you watch the Karen Reed trial? Just wondering, because that was a kind of a joke. So
Can we just
I
go
don't want you to think I'm
column
stupid.
by column through the first entry here, 16498?
We
What
were
does instant
gaslit into
messages
thinking
mean?
it's not accurate in the Karen Reed
That's
trial.
referencing text messages.
Second column, outgoing. Does that indicate there's an outgoing communication?
Yes, it'll reflect outgoing or incoming depending on the recipient or sender.
The next column, there's a 1. What does that mean?
That just might be like one entry, one message. I don't see the header for the columns. That one I'm not I'm sure of.
All right, and the date and time we've already explained. Let's talk about the from, paren owner, and then the participants. What does this all mean?
So the from section, again, if we're looking at the first row of data, it's indicative that it's a text message because the sender, it's listing the phone number being used to send that message. And then for iPhone devices specifically, if you're communicating with another Apple device, it may also list the phone number as well as your backup, which is your Apple ID. So if it can't transmit that message through your phone number, it might default to your iCloud account. And in this case, it's listing both.
All right, and if, for instance, the outgoing recipient or the incoming sender of the text message is in the contacts, would it show up with the person's name, such as Wancho?
Yes, our software will display your contact name as how you save it.
And if there's no contact name, it would just show the phone number?
Phone number or, again, Apple, your iCloud account.
Videos, 16499, capture time, what does that indicate?
So that is when the video, in this case, it looks like a video is captured on the device.
Okay, we're going to see the video.
Let's specifically talk about entry 16520. Again, we've discussed that's an instant message and it's incoming rather than outgoing. So that means it came to this phone device.
Yes.
And over to the right of the date and time, which would have been 6:07 p.m. 30 seconds on Christmas 2019, it indicates that it's from a contact named Mo. Is that accurate?
Yes.
2019.
Then the contents speak for itself. Going down to 16522, an outgoing instant message at 11:31 p.m. 57 seconds on Christmas 2019. What is the content of that communication?
The content of the message is hide and seek. I shall.
Hide and seek. No, let me get myself out of here so you guys can see it better. There we go.
Turning down to 17167, it's an instant message that indicates it's outgoing from this device on January 13th, 2020, 5:01 p.m. 41 seconds. And it's from what is paren owner. Does that mean it's from the device?
Yes.
What's the content of that text message?
I'm sorry, what was the line item number?
17167.
And bless you and all of you too. I'll get rid of him.
And then the next three are also outgoing messages. What do they indicate as far as content?
Starting with 17168, then I'll be better, followed by 17169, ugh, and 17170, Torres.
Exactly. I've been pointing that out. That's not how you play hide and go seek.
Turning now to entry 31103, which is on page 49 of the 59-page PDF. Again, it looks like what we talked about before, the com.apple.camera application.
Yeah.
It's
Who did
open
she
up
send these to?
you.
Hold on a second. Is this to his brother? Hold on. I want to hear that again. And I want to read these to you. So January 13th of 2020. Is this to George's brother? All right. Remember the date George died 2/24/2020. Okay. So this is January 13th, 2020. Little more than like 5 weeks. Please do something with yourself, Sarah. God bless you. Hold on. It's still fugly. Let's start again. I mean, we could. Boo. It's a Torres thing. Boo. Keep the fugly creep out. It's still fugly. Lose.
Turning down to 17167. It's an instant message that indicates it's outgoing from this device on January 13th, 2020, 5:01 p.m., 41 seconds. And it's from what is wherein owner. Does that mean it's from the device?
Yes.
What's the content of that text message?
Sorry, what was the line item number?
17167.
And bless you and all of you too. I'll get rid of him.
All right. Who's Mo? Hold on. Because right before that, Mo says to Sarah, please do something with yourself, Sarah. God bless you. And then Sarah says back to Mo, this is at 5:01 p.m. on January 13th. And bless you and all of you too. Is Mo the brother? I'll get rid of him. Then I'll be better, she says.
Number?
17167.
And bless you and all of you too. I'll get rid of him.
Yeah, texting George's brother. And then it says, then I'll be better. And then she says, ugh, Torres. These are still from her.
And then the next three are also outgoing messages. What do they indicate as far as content?
Starting with 17168, then I'll be better, followed by 17169, ugh, and 17170, Torres.
Turning now to entry 31103, which is on page 49 of the 59-page PDF. Again, it looks like what we talked about before, the com.camera application gets opened up to be used at 11:12 p.m. 40 seconds. Is that what this data reflects?
Yes.
And then at entry 31107, a video that ends up being captured as IMG_1062.mov begins at 11:12 p.m. 45 seconds on February 23rd, 2020. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems her ex-husband Brian is paying for this phone.
And then there does not seem to be any intervening closing of the camera application before we get to 31113.
In that portion, I don't see that information.
And then at 11:23 p.m. 03 seconds on February 23rd, 2020, in entry 31113, a second movie is generated by this device labeled IMG_1063.mov.
Yes.
I'm going to continue publishing on this exhibit.
Yeah, show us. Show us the video. Yeah, jury's going to need a break. After showing the video, they might go to lunch. It's about 12:13 East Coast time. A little bit behind. All right, trigger warning. I'm going to full screen it.
For everything you've done to me. For everything you've done to me. Fuck you. Fuck you. Stupid. That's my name. Don't wear it on. I can't fucking breathe, babe. Sarah. Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me. Sarah. 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 Sarah, I can't breathe, babe. That's on you. Sarah, I can't breathe. It's on you. Sarah. Real ransom. Might want to give it for it extra. Because I got it. Sarah. Real ransom. Sarah. I can't breathe, babe. Oh. That's what I feel like when he's chewing on me. Sarah. Fuck you. Breathe, Sarah. Yeah. You should probably shut the fuck up.
For the record, that was img_1062.mov, now publishing 1063, same respective file name.
Is there anybody in the chat who's never seen or heard that video before? You want to watch it again, or has everyone already seen it? I'll rewind if you want me to. I mean, you can hear he's clearly begging to be let out. She's taunting him. So creepy. The shush is so creepy. So haunting and creepy. Slam dunk right there. I'm not going to play it again. Okay. Please don't. Please don't. It is very hard to watch. If you're on replay and you want to watch it later, rewind from here and go back and watch it. She's taunting him. She's saying, now you know what it feels like when you choke me. It's horrible. It's horrifying. Here's the second video.
No other questions of this witness?
Any cross-examination?
Maybe don't cross her. Maybe just let it go. Let them go to lunch.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I just want to get that out of there.
I believe you stated on direct that you were called to the scene and you were asked to do your analysis out there. Is that correct?
At least a download.
Download. What type of phone was this?
An Apple iPhone XS.
And how were you able to get into the phone, for lack of a better word?
I was provided with the phone's passcode.
Okay. With an Apple phone, without being given that passcode, are you able to get in an Apple phone?
Maybe not necessarily unlock the phone, even though that is an option through some of our advanced tools that is supported. But it can have the ability to download the phone even in a locked state and pull 85% of that data.
Is it a much easier process when you have the code?
Thank you.
It's quicker, yes.
And how were you provided that code?
I believe either through Detective Copsel or Connolly at the time, or I may have asked Miss Boone just to reconfirm the passcode.
And did she give you the passcode?
Yes, somebody did, yes.
Yeah, she gave you the passcode because she didn't remember making those videos because she was hammered. After their 2 giant bottles of 2 magnums of Woodbridge Chardonnay.
Now, on the first exhibit that went up, or when you're talking about the communications or the identifying factors of the phone. One of the things that were identified is dates and times. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Also, you said it would tell you if the source was incoming or outgoing. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And then you said it could identify either by phone number or name. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. On the examples that you gave us, who is the identifying name as to the outgoing on this phone?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Who is the identifying name for the outgoing text or calls on this phone?
I think in some of the line items that were shown above, it was just listed as a phone number.
Was there ever a name listed?
A physical name, possibly in other line items, but in this, and again, in those excerpts, it's just by phone number.
Okay. Did you ever see the name Brian Boone?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you see the name Brian Boone?
I believe in one of the iCloud or accounts that was logged into the phone, there was an associated email address.
Okay. Taking that, was it any other place where you would see in a different name as to the outgoing, other than Brian Boone?
Again, there might have been other names listed in other portions of it. But again, in those excerpts, it was just either by phone number or, again, with the Apple iPhone listing, the iCloud account.
All right. Do you have a copy of the exhibit up there?
No, not on me.
Can we get that pulled up, please?
A little behind.
Are you able to see that?
And no, this monitor is not working.
May we approach?
Yes.
He's going to say, can we go to lunch? I need some time to prepare over lunch. Maybe not. Maybe. They should not be focusing on his lips when he's speaking to his client. That's privileged. Come on, Law and Crime. Get with the program. You're going to have the cameras taken away if you keep doing that. When I was at the Karen retrial that day, it was June 14th. They banned cameras after the morning stream because one of the court TV guy who was the cameraman mistakenly, it wasn't even his fault, got a juror on camera because they brought the juror into the courtroom and didn't tell him to take the camera down.
Ma'am, were you able to see that?
Yes.
There's a entry on 12/25/2019. Is that correct?
Are you referencing like the instant message row? Yes. Yes.
All right. Does it, as far as participants, what does that show you? What does it tell you?
So it's listing the owner in reference to we'll say the first phone number, 8684. It's referencing that phone number as well as the Gmail account or iCloud account associated with the phone, and then it's listing a physical name of Brian Boone.
Okay, so it's showing Brian Boone as being the owner of the phone. Is that correct?
For that phone number and or one of the participants in that message conversation.
Did you recall seeing any other name associated with that phone number other than Brian Boone?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
All right, when you did the analysis of this, and you would look for the participants and get that information, match it up with the phone number. Then in certain cases, they will show you the owner name because you said Apple is very detailed in some of their
Yes.
applications. So did you ever see another name associated with this account other than Brian Boone?
There was another iCloud account logged in on the physical phone.
Okay,
There was no name attached.
there was no name attached.
Oh, bless you.
Bless you.
Now, when you're identifying these sources as being either outgoing or incoming sources, and
Right. Brian did it.
is that basically telling you what device is being used?
No, it's not indicative of a specific device other than we know outgoing. The source, obviously the source is the phone that we extracted that data from. In incoming messages, it does not let us know if the message was made through a Samsung Galaxy or another iPhone.
Okay. What identifying information do you get at that time?
In regards to receiving a message, in this case, or what's displayed there, it's going to give us the content of the message. It's going to give us the date and time that the message was sent or received. And again, like in your phone, it does depict either through a small notification arrows indicating ingoing or outgoing. So it's just displaying that version in text up there.
Okay. And then from there, it's basically telling you the number that it came from. Is that correct?
He's trying to say
Yes,
maybe it
like in
wasn't her.
reference to that top row, it's saying that message came from that phone number. Again, the top line item, last 4 digits is 8684. And then it's also listing the message participants.
It's not telling you the person who sent the message, is it?
Correct. Just that it's originating from a phone number.
So if 2 people or more people had access to a phone, you wouldn't, from this information, you wouldn't be able to tell who actually sent the message on any given time. Is that correct?
No, I'm not a fly on the wall and I can't see who's physically typing out messages.
I'm not a fly on the wall and I can't see who's physically typing out messages. You go, girl. Go, Junella.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions.
Any redirect examination?
Other than just your subjective interpretation given the context of conversations.
Yes.
And if photographs or videos are taken during these conversations, that could be indicative of who is behind the phone device as well.
Based on sound and visuals, it does help.
Thank you.
Can this witness be released?
As far as the state is concerned, yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, ma'am, you're released. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, petty paralegal,
Any
for
other
gifting
witnesses or evidence to call at this time?
Not for the morning presentation.
Okay, all right. Members of our jury, it is 12:21. At this point in time, we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break. I'm going to ask you to report back here at 2 o'clock at 12A, the Orange County Courthouse. I'm going to give you a similar instruction as.
All right, they're coming back at 2. Thank you, petty paralegal, for gifting 2 memberships. You're amazing and so generous. And to those of you who were gifted, welcome, welcome, welcome. Mrs. Mojo Rise in her cell in prison should fit the criteria she did. Thank you for your super chat. And Husky Lover says, this testimony of the device forensics proves that Richard Green's testimony was the most accurate testimony. Going back to the Karen Reed case, as always, that's what we do. Thank you, Mindy, for a Venmo. That is very sweet and kind of you. So very much. Here's what we're going to do. First thing we're going to do is look at Howie Carr's latest tweet on the Karen Reed case with regard to Judge Beverly Cannoni. Then I'm going to hit end. We're going to redirect you to the Ashley Benefield stream that I'm going to do covering the hearing that's happening at 1:30 regarding the juror issue that was not televised last week. They called the jurors in to find out if there's any juror misconduct that would warrant a new trial for Ashley Benefield. So that is what we are going to do. That is the plan. Let's take a look at Howie Carr's tweet, because Howie Carr tweeted the other day. If you haven't seen his first tweet, let's go to his first tweet and then we'll go to his second tweet. All right. So his first tweet was October 20th, which was yesterday. And there has been some confusion about this. That's why my tweet says she may be reassigned. I mean, my community post from yesterday. All right. This is on the Karen Reed case. So if you're interested, hang around. This is Howie Carr's tweet from yesterday. Breaking, more bad news for Meatball Morrissey's attempts to frame Karen Reed. Hearing from reliable sources that Judge Beverly, Auntie Bev Canoni, is out as of January 1 as the boss of Norfolk Superior Court. Her current title is Regional Administrative Justice, RAJ, as in the old days of British colonial rule in India, Raj. Not sure if Raj is like being president of the Elks Club for a year or so, and then you're rotated out automatically. But judicial sources tell me that when the Raj is replaced, as Canoni is about to be, he or she generally moves out of the rotation of the county they were boss of, in this case, the rotten borough of Norfolk. Often the deposed Rajas flee their previous base for their Cape mansions until they reach the mandatory retirement age of 70. Doesn't Auntie Bev have a mansion in Centerville? If Canoni's out of Norfolk County courtrooms, and I don't know for sure that she is, and it's unlikely to be officially announced anytime soon, to avoid further humiliation for the reeling meatball mob, any judge would be an improvement if needed. Oh, if indeed Morrissey's second attempted necktie party for Karen Reed takes place in Dedham in January. As you know, the fix was always in with Canoni presiding. Remember her jury verdict forms with no options for a not guilty finding? Canoni is a second-generation hack layabout. Her father was a courthouse payroll patriot in Quincy, Meatball's hometown. Age 63, she's never worked a day in the dreaded private sector. Her hack brother was the public defender for jailbird Chris Albert, the Canton selectman, piss-poor pizza purveyor, and brother of dodgy cops Brian and Kevin Fat Albert. In 1994, jailbird Chris was convicted of killing a guy in a hit-and-run car accident and did 6 months in the HOC. Remember, he also fled the scene and didn't turn himself in until something like 30 hours later. In other words, Canoni is Norfolk County hack royalty. Of course, she refused to accept the not guilty verdicts from the jury in Karen Reed's first kangaroo court trial. I just hope that being stripped of the Raj title means Auntie Bev is gone, period, from Norfolk County. It would be good justice for justice, bad news for the just us corruption that has destroyed all confidence in law enforcement under Meatball Morrissey. This has not been a good weekend for Meatball. The only upside, as I mentioned in my Herald column today, is that the Pats game in London started early. So it's kind of like Thanksgiving morning and you get to have booze on your breath before noon, like before the traditional high school games, and everyone pretends not to notice. Right, Meatball? Pour yourself another Captain and Cola in the memory of Auntie Bev, the framingest judge south of the Neponset. And then his post from today, just a few moments ago, breaking while we were live on this. This was about 11:20 a.m., less than an hour ago, about an hour ago. Seems that he got a response from somebody at the courthouse because, you know, they don't always want to respond to Howie Carr. Breaking, Judge Auntie Bev Canoni will remain as judge in the second murder trial of Karen Reed. Superior Court announces this AM. Now confirmed that she is out as Raj, Regional Administrative Justice out of Norfolk County as of January 1st. But the trial court claims that that's just merely, quote, rotation. A funny coincidence, I guess you could say. Blacks also claim that after she catastrophically ran the first kangaroo court murder trial of Reed, Auntie Bev will remain in the just us system of Norfolk County. And he spells that JUST-US. That's where she grew up, a second-generation payroll patriot in the Quincy Hackarama. Read the statement below, which says, "Hi, Howie. In Superior Court, regional administrative justices and other leaders serve in their leadership roles for 3 years, after which they rotate out of them, barring exceptional circumstances. For that reason, several administrative justices and other leaders will in 2025 rotate out of those roles, including Judge Cannoni from her role as Regional Administrative Justice in Norfolk County. Judge Cannoni will continue to serve in Norfolk County in 2025 and will preside over the Commonwealth v. Karen Reed case in January. She will also assume the chair of the Superior Court's Criminal Committee. Wait, so she was transferred to civil court, but now they're moving her back to be the chair of the Superior Court's Criminal Committee? That's interesting. She had been, I thought, transferred to civil court. Best. XOXO, Jennifer. That's interesting. Pregnant pause. Well, this is, I don't know how much stock to take in this comment from the who's this person that gave this comment? She's from the court spokesperson. Sometimes this is what they do, right? First of all, I would have loved to be have been a fly on the wall yesterday when all this stuff broke, because they were all of a sudden working on a Sunday doing damage control, right? The PR team working overtime in Norfolk County to try and spin this. But this is what they do. It's like with Proctor. It's like he was first, moved somewhere temporarily, suspended with pay. And then it's like they gradually rehome them, right? This is what they do. They gradually rehome them. So this just may be step one, baby steps, my friends, baby steps. And that is what they do. So who knows what will happen, but I'm sure that they were in major overtime yesterday. Thanks, Mama Shi. I put this up earlier. Says, good morning, beautiful peoples. Got here late, but caught up on 1.5 speed. Hope everyone's having a ducking good start to the week. Thank you, Mama Shi, for always being so kind and generous to the channel. And for someone who bought me a matcha latte, thank you so much. Dishonorable Kim Jong-Cannoni. I believe, yes, I do believe that if Sarah had exercised her right to remain silent from the jump, I think this would be, they'd have less of a case against her. Yes, I do think that. She walked herself into certain stories, and that 2-hour interrogation that we watched was damning, in my opinion, because she's locked herself into it wasn't intentional. But in order to show battered spouse, you have to show that something happened and that you did intend to defend yourself. So she's kind of locked in. That's why she's going to testify, hopefully maybe tomorrow, in narrative form. A couple of people asked this question. Can her last lawyers speak about their experiences with Sarah? No. All the communications with Sarah that they had are privileged. They are not allowed to speak about any attorney-client communications or relationships or anything that they had with her. Many of them made motions to get out and be relieved, and they just say we have irreconcilable differences, and they leave it at that. Bonnie McCann had pointed this out earlier, that Howie Carr jumped the gun, as it seems, and we just went over that. Dippy, you're an Apple developer. If somebody wants to give Dippy my email me. Maybe you could, if you don't know anything about the Karen Reed case, you might want to look into it, and maybe you can give us an opinion. Fanbase at mlittlelaw.com. Fanbase at mlittlelaw.com. Petty Paralegal wants to know, could Sarah at any point ask to take the deal still? Like, is this still on the table? Thank you. I don't know. That's between the prosecutor and the defense attorney. Sometimes the deal will be pulled depending on how well the prosecution thinks their case is going for them. They can still negotiate at any time, but I do not know if that offer of 15 years is still on the table. I have no personal knowledge of that. So it's a great question. Anything could happen. There was a trial we watched recently, Adam Montgomery. Right before the first day of trial, he took a plea on some of the charges. And so those charges came off the table, and then the trial started. And those charges were no longer an issue. So there's that. All right. Thank you all for coming. Please smash the like button on your way out and on your way into the next Ashley Benefield stream, which I have scheduled to start at 1:10, which is exactly 30 minutes from now. So I will see you over there. If the Ashley Benefield hearing runs long, we're going to start the Boone stream late, which will just give us the ability to fast forward through many of the breaks and other parts. But don't worry, you won't miss a thing. Somebody said, where in New York are you? I'm at Long Island, Brian. Yeah, we probably have been at many of the same concerts, but I travel for my concerts too. I love that. So yeah, probably. All right, mods, thanks for keeping it classy. Love you guys. Do all the YouTube-ish type things that YouTube likes. Share the streams out, including this Ashley Benefield thing, because I know so many of you are interested in that. Teleport safely, my friends. I will see you over there in 30 minutes. Ready, set,